killed the then Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and others when he hurled a homemade explosive device at him as he approached a crowd for a speech in the western Japan city of Wakayama nearly 2 years ago. During questioning, Kimura had claimed that his intention was not to kill the Prime Minister, but to draw attention to his opposition to an age restriction that prevented him from running for political office.
Recapping the top story, in an unprecedented move in South Africa's democratic era, Parliament has postponed the budget sitting due to parties that form the government of national unity failing to agree on how the budget should be constituted. I am Mondela for SFM News headlines at 3:30.
Coming up in your sports this hour, SARS proceed with Royal AM sale with bids starting at 15 million rand. Hamilton invigorated by Ferrari move at F1 launch, and Zverev claims victory over Boo in the opening round of Rio Open. More details at 3:30.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned, and almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
We're in the eye care industry. We're saving over 1,200 rand a month. To all the business owners, you've got nothing to lose by giving OUTsurance a chance to quote on your business insurance. It's true to say that you always get something out with OUTsurance.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
It's time to shine for young athletes across South Africa. From thrilling football and rugby matches to intense netball games. Experience the passion and prowess of Mzansi's finest young sports stars. SuperSport Schools and SABC Plus bring you the specially curated channel dedicated entirely to school and youth sports. Join us as we celebrate their achievements and bring the excitement right to your screens. This is your chance to support the future of South African sports. The SuperSport Schools channel on SABC Plus, where every game is a home game. Don't miss a moment. Download the SABC Plus app today. Available on iOS, Google, and Smart TV. Or visit sabc-plus.com to start streaming. SuperSport Schools on SABC Plus. All the sport you care about most. Now streaming wherever you are.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So here I am, around 10 to 2, sitting at home, having lunch, and coffee coming up next. And the plan would be that I would take in the budget speech at home. I don't live too far away from the SABC. Take in the budget speech, get the analysis, and then get here at 3 o'clock for a further 1 hour analysis, and then start the National Pulse. Well, I'll tell you what. Things changed completely in 15 or 20 minutes. And it started with murmurings and gossip early on, about 2 hours before 2 p.m. that said, guess what? There's been an emergency cabinet meeting which suggested that something was going wrong. And as we then found out afterwards, certainly nothing went right. And that is why we now have a situation, an unprecedented situation, that the budget speech for the year has been postponed. I understand to March. The dates don't really matter. The significance that South Africa's budget speech has been postponed. And that is why here I am, leaving my coffee alone, and leaving my lunch, and being disrupted. And I think not only have you been disrupted, in fact, the entire country will be disrupted, or have been disrupted as well. Let's go back to why we've been disrupted. Here's the voice of the Speaker of the National Assembly, Thoko Didiza, and she said this.
Honorable members, for now, since there are no mics that are connected, which unfortunately had not been brought to our attention, we will try and utilize the roving mic when necessary. I have just had a consultation with all the whips of parties following a consultation with the leader of the government business. In terms of Rule 48, subsection 2, we have decided to adjourn proceedings for a date to be determined by the programming committee. This is in accordance with Rule 10. Honorable members, before we started the session, we were informed by the leader of government business, as it is the process in terms of the communications between ourselves and the executive, that while today we've been gathered here to actually have the Minister of Finance presenting the budget to this august house, that there has not been agreement in terms of parties in the executive to actually find one another in proposals of the budget. And the executive therefore decided, as some of you already know, and as your whips have said in our discussion, some things that have already been on the media about where there are possible increases and where different parties as well as members of the community's perspective on those proposed increases were saying. And Cabinet therefore decided not to come and do a presentation of the budget and allow themselves enough time to re-look at the budget and come back to this house in March at the time at which they will inform us. So, no, honorable members, I will point you, I have noted your hands. Well, in our consultations, which I must report to you, the different whips shared with us their perspectives on the matter. There were those who agreed and asked that we ask the executive to give us a definite time in March so that we are able to deal with the pressures of time for the legislature. Secondly, there were those who were saying they are not accepting the postponement. But obviously, we did indicate that while we note their refusal on the postponement of the sitting, it would not be of any use to postpone when there is no presentation that will be made. There were others who already declared their rejection on what they say it's an alleged increase of 2% on.
Okay, we're just going to pause for that because the finance minister is now addressing the media.
For a new or amended budget to be tabled on the 12th of March 2025. That's your next date for the new budget.
Thank you, Minister. I'll now take the questions from the floor. I'm going to see the number of hands and then we determine whether we're doing one or two rounds. And then, in terms of procedure, you'll have to indicate your name, the media house where you come from, and then you filled your question. Let me start here, and then go. The two hands up there. Yeah, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got 6 hands. Okay. Start, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Tepi Lefele with Bloomberg News. Minister, at what point did it become apparent during your consultation that there was not consensus on this budget? And if there is not consensus again by the 12th of March, what then becomes the next steps? Thank you.
Next hand.
Edward West.
Mike.
Edward West, Business Report. I just wanted to know, is it normal to hold a cabinet meeting just before the budget every year, or could it have been held a bit earlier?
The next hand. Yes, sir.
So, what kind of impact will this have in terms of how you
engage with the international investors and bond holders. And obviously, it's something that we were anticipating what would happen to it.
There's a lady there.
SABC. Minister, earlier on when you were here, you indicated that there's no consensus from the cabinet. It has not been approved by the cabinet. Why did you have to take such a risk?
Can one man look okay?
No. Let me protect you and you ask the question. The minister is going to only deal with the responses after you ask.
Why, Minister, did you have to take such a risk considering the expenses involved in this process? Is that not a fruitless expenditure considering the limited resources that Treasury has?
Ma'am, before you go, what risk in relation to what?
In relation to the postponement of the budget. In the risk of not, when he was here earlier on, he said the budget has not been approved by cabinet. So I'm asking, why did he have to take such a risk of coming and presenting a budget that has not been approved by cabinet, as per his words? He said in the past it used to be approved before he presents. Thanks.
Thanks.
No, you didn't have your hand up. I didn't see your hand.
From ENCA. The DA has already released a statement suggesting that it couldn't agree with the ANC when it comes to the 2% VAT increase. Did the DA force your hand to postpone the budget, Minister? And that's the case. Is then the GNU safe? Is the country safe in the hands of the GNU?
Which ones do you want me to take? Which ones do you take? The minister will respond, and then I'll clarify the ones that he doesn't respond to.
The DA one. At what point, difficult question, because you never anticipate this stuff. It relates to the second question, for instance, somebody, is it normal? The answer is yes, because some of the information is market sensitive. Because of that nature, we normally give an indication. For instance, 2 weeks ago, we went to Cabinet and gave an indication. Precisely because of the market sensitivity of some of the issues, we didn't put some of these issues on the table. And then we normally put it early in the morning. The unfortunate thing today, that's why we didn't start early, is because the president was not around, so we started late. So it's normal to do that. Was the 2% the normal contention?
The only.
Huh?
Was the 2% the only contention?
Yeah, contentious issue. You can't have the 2% alone without talking about what's going to replace it, and that does not become contentious. What I'm trying to say, what we are grappling with, is not necessarily the 2% per se. What we are grappling with, given the challenges and priorities that we are facing, how do we fund them? Really, that's the debate. Do we borrow more? What are the implications of that? Do we continue cutting expenditure? What are the implications of that? Do we raise tax? What are the implications of that? There's general agreement that in the current environment, we need to find a way of funding our priorities. The debate is what is the best way of doing it? And give the bonds to Duncan and give you, Minister, the remaining one. Bond.
Thanks, Minister.
We don't talk to board holders. You guys talk to them.
Yes. Thank you, Minister. So typically what would have happened today, what typically would have happened is that we would have had a global investor call after the budget with our domestic and foreign investors. And then there would have been some engagement over the next few days, mainly with the domestic investors, followed by a foreign roadshow. Of course, if the budget has been postponed to the 12th of March, all of those engagements will now shift until after and on the 12th of March, as per our normal practice. We will, of course, consider releasing a statement more broadly after this, but some of the key areas of communication that would have already gone out to some of our bondholders around, for example, what would happen to auction levels, that communication has already gone out, and that communication is important to go out. So there are some areas of communication that have already happened, and it's important that that goes out. In terms of the broader fiscal framework, there will have to be a re-engagement on the 12th of March when the new fiscal framework is tabled.
On the question of the DA having released a statement claiming that they forced the ANC hand, I think all of you followed Minister Mackenzie when he was replying in Parliament. And in his reply, I think he succinctly clarified it was neither a DA issue, an ANC issue, a PA issue, or a DA versus ANC, or a PA versus ANC, or IFP versus ANC. It was a cabinet decision. And let me clarify, in cabinet we have a sitting order, so the older ministers sit first. So it means when you are raising hands, it will be the ANC ministers who will raise their hands and speak first. And the focus of the discussion is not about party politics. It's about what is the balance that we need to achieve between managing our fiscal framework, managing our ability to protect the interest of South Africans in general and the poor at outmost. How do we deal with the inequality that confronts all of us? So it's never a DA ANC issue. It's a collective cabinet decision. And the minister, you raised the question of why did the minister take a risk? And he has explained, he didn't take a risk. Ordinarily we do it that way, to manage the market sensitivity. So it's not something new. Before he goes to the MTDPS, he's going to come on that morning and give us the issues. But there are continuous consultations that happen. But bottom line, at the end of the day, Treasury must balance the books, must make sure there's money that's available, and in balancing the books, they'll then have to say, in terms of what Cabinet has proposed in the previous engagement, what does the reality say? And then the minister has covered what the issues to say. How do you then plug the gap that we have in the fiscals? Do we borrow more? Do we do, what are the other things that we do? So there are two more hands that I've seen, which will be my last round. Can I have all hands up? I'm going to start with you. And then you follow. Yeah, there's no follow-ups. Can I have the hands that are up? Let's have the hands up. Don't threaten to raise the hand. Raise the hand, please. You're starting, she follows. You follow. And then there's the lady right at the back. You are number 4. And the lady at the front, number 5, number 6. Ma'am with the camera, please sit down so that I can see everybody. Number 7, number 8, and number 9. That's the last round. Hello?
Please note we also have Pretoria.
How many people in Pretoria?
Three people in Pretoria.
So let's do this. We've got 7 hands here. You are going to guide me on the 3 in Pretoria. So we'll take the first 5 here, respond to them, and then the last 3, is it 2 here, and then we'll go to Pretoria for the last 3, and then we'll finish. So it's 3 rounds of questions. Thank you.
Hi, Minister. Mamalo Nyenze here from EWN. Just quickly follow up on your earlier comments at the press conference this morning about having further discussions with the DA, with the Deputy Minister Saruben, on any issues that may arise from the budget. When do you expect those discussions to begin? Because I imagine with this postponement, it's just made matters a bit more urgent. And is it perhaps not a good idea maybe for a more comprehensive agreement between parties on things like the budget as opposed to a clearinghouse mechanism in the GNU? Is it not maybe time for a coalition or some solid agreement on how to deal with this matter? Because this is just the first budget speech of the GNU. Thank you.
I'll answer that question for you.
Good afternoon, Minister Tsili from Mbele. So you say that it is not necessarily the VAT issue, but rather a funding mechanism or how to fund. Is there any other issue except how to fund that there is no consensus on? And then, DG, if you could please, can you please just take us through the process, because we've never gone through this in the country. So just the process of when you start talking about the budget with the departments, with everyone, how exactly does it unfold? Because I would like to believe that most of the information would be information that members would have been aware of, or at least departments, as it were. And how do we, going forward, handle the information in the review documents that we've been dealing with in money? Because I think also I would like to just say that we do think as the media that it is in the interest of the public to allow us to elaborate as much as we can, to also avoid speculation on some of the issues, because we have been handling these documents since early this morning.
The hand here.
Minister Hilary Joffe of Business Day. Forgive me if I'm asking something that has already been asked, but following up on the last question, can I ask you specifically, was there consensus on the large quantity of spending increase that you penciled into the budget over the medium term? Was there any dispute over that or over any of the details? And just secondly, our procedural question, what do we do now with these documents? I mean, I'm assuming that since a large number of economists and a large number of journalists agree every word, the only thing you can really do is just publish them as a draft to avoid inside information or inside trading. But maybe are we pleased to go ahead and write about them as a draft, to be amended on not? If you can just guide us on what to do now, unless you plan to keep it.
Bring them back.
Hand number 4.
Alisa came from CNBC Africa. Minister, seeing that there was no consensus or agreement in your multi-party coalition government that pertains to the numbers that you were supposed to present today, I have to ask, to what extent was this genuinely a GNU coalition budget, and what's your solution then to get your house in order?
Number 5.
Komana Gombi from Reuters. Ministers, coalition governments generally disagree on most things except the budget. What went wrong this time? And to follow on from my colleague's tale, at what point in the process did you realize?
So you've been hearing the voice of the Minister of Finance, Minister Enoch Godongwana. Now, normally this would be post the budget speech reaction, as you now know, that the budget speech was not delivered. Unprecedented, certainly in democratic South Africa. It has never happened. And there are many reasons for it, but I think he's confirmed that there was a disagreement effectively between the executive, which means the cabinet ministers, which really means, in this case, part of the GNU, the African National Congress, and the DA. And it concerns, amongst other things, the most significant issue, an increase in VAT from 15 to 17%, which was shot down by the parties outside the ANC, in particular the DA. Now, just your quick thought, just one word to give me your emotions, your reaction in terms of what you feel about the fact that the budget speech was postponed. Just one word. Text us right away to WhatsApp 0614 104 107, and you can also tweet us on our social media pages. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 3:30.
Thank you, Ashraf. In the news headlines, EFF leader Julius Malema has accused Parliament Speaker Thoko Didiza of reducing the country's budget to party politics. He was reacting to Finance Minister Enoch Godongana's inability to table the 2020-25 budget due to disagreements within the GNU parties. The sitting has been postponed to the 12th of March. In an unprecedented move in South Africa's democratic era, Parliament has postponed the budget sitting due to parties that form the government of national unity failing to agree on how the budget should be constituted. And the latest round of EU sanctions will target Russia's lucrative aluminium sector and what's come to be known as Russia's shadow fleet. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, an update from Gautrain that no trains will be running between Rosebank and Park Station due to an illegal drilling issue. A replacement bus service is in operation in Centurion. John Foster Drive, Robbie Street is closed due to flooding at Hennops River, and Littleton Road is closed at Hennops River Bridge, also due to flooding. Roads also closed on Nelma Pierce Drive, West Avenue, End Avenue and Lechen Avenue. They're all closed at Hennops River due to flooding. In KZN, the N2 southbound slow moving towards Spaghetti Junction. The M35 in Umlazia's landslide incident reported near Palani Mall, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions. In the northwest on the R511, flooding reported between Brits and Beesterkraal. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound queuing towards the R300 highway. Bakencroft Street outbound is slow movings towards the elevated freeway, and Ruland Street is closed between Bakencroft Street and Plain Street for today's budget speech event. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Khapele.
Right, to me, in the midst of the budget speech, no budget speech, we still have sport.
We do still have sports. A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Well, the South African Revenue Services have been given the green light by the court to sell Royal AM with interested buyers to make a bid from 15 million rand for the club. Now, the sale is part of SARS efforts to recover 40 million rand in tax debt linked to club president Sean Mkhize and her family trust. While the club sale price has been set at 15 million rand, buyers must also take on existing financial obligation, and this includes another 15 million rand owed to striker Samir Nurkovic following a ruling by the Court of Arbitration for Sport last year. Meanwhile, in a twist of things, Royal AM management met with some of the players and the coaching staff, just telling them to remain calm, promising the team that they will return to action soon. So it's a developing story, and we'll definitely keep a close eye on it. Then remember yesterday I did ask if SuperSport would make it or make last night's game special for Coach Gavin Hunt because it was his 999th game of his career. Well, they did just that, thrashing Kaizer Chiefs 4-1, and this was actually the first time that they had scored more than one goal in a single game in the league. And despite the win, Hunt still says that it does not necessarily mean that a turning point, or this is a turning point in their results this season.
I don't want to say too much, as if you just got to read the media the last couple of weeks and months, you know. Yeah, our strength is that, you know. But, and as I said, I think we've played better. But we just got to be careful and try and get as many points as we can, and try and see how we can do in the Nedbank Cup as well. You know, we've got a big game there as well. So, yeah.
Meanwhile, Chiefs coach Nasruddin Nabi says that it was a painful loss.
Il n'y a vraiment rien à dire, c'est un off-day total. Ça se voyait dès les premières minutes que le joueur...
Definitely it was a very difficult game. From the first minute already we could see that it was an off game for us. I cannot give excuses all the time, but I believe there is an excuse, seeing that we did not have enough time to recover 2 days. The other team had a week at least. And it's a deserved defeat for us, but you can see mentally that we were not up to standard, and we cracked. And unfortunately, we can see that the result is also a very painful result for us.
Well, there's still a lot of football action to look forward to tonight, and we'll touch on that one in the next hour. In terms of rugby, Warren Gatland says that he left his role as Wales head coach after being weighed down by criticism, including from his former players. The 61-year-old stepped down after Wales suffered a 22-15 reverse against Italy earlier this month, a decision that he made in the build-up to the test in Rome. And Gatland has admitted that the negative atmosphere has had has taken its toll. In tennis, Alexander Zverev booked his place in the second round of the Rio Open with a win over China's Wu Yanchokete. The world number 2 struggled in the first set, steaming into a 4-1 lead, only to fall behind 5-4, with the Chinese holding a set point on serve before the German finally pushed through to winner. And Zverev will now take on Alexander Strenkova in the next round. In motorsport, Lewis Hamilton has taken to the track for the first time behind the wheel of the Ferrari SF25 car. The F1 kicked off their season in style with a star-studded launch event, F1 75 Live, at the O2 Arena in London last night, with Hamilton appearing in an official public capacity for the first time in Ferrari red. All 10 teams unveiled their car liveries, with all 20 drivers present on stage throughout the night. Definitely looking forward to the new season and just to see how Lewis Hamilton is going to drive in that Ferrari this season. With that said, it is a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Okay, perfect. We don't mind. We talk less sport and more the budget speech today.
Fully understandable.
Because the complete attention of the country is like, not even on Kaiser Chiefs losing 4-1. Like, no, we can leave that for alone. Let's talk about the no budget speech, right?
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
We're in the security industry. Every month we save 1,488 rand with OUTsurance. Just having made the switch from our previous service provider to OUTsurance has allowed us to put another vehicle onto our fleet.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
The giants of French rugby, Bordeaux Butler and Clermont Auvergne, are fighting for a massive victory to cement top 5 positions. This is the top 14. Rugby the French way. Catch the huge contest between Bordeaux Union Butler and Clermont Auvergne on Sunday, 23 February at 10 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on HEALA.org. That's HEALA.org.
Right, let's talk TV licenses. Now, do you know that paying your TV license isn't just about legalities? It helps fund local productions and creates jobs in the entertainment industry. That means more epic dramas, exciting sports, and news that keeps us informed. So, when was the last time you checked yours? Visit his website, www.tvlic.coza, and make sure you're up to date. After all, it's your screen, your story. You got that hashtag, your screen, your story.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bakkie to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Every day when we get to the show, we answer the question, what for you moves the national pulse? And often we can predict it, but often it's completely different. I've never been so certain there's only one issue that will move the national pulse today. It will certainly get your pulse rate rising and that of the entire country. And that's got to be the budget speech, no budget speech. I've asked you for one word to describe it, describe your emotions really. 086 000 2032. You can certainly let us know by calling in. Then WhatsApp, text messages or voice note 0614 104 107. And yes, you certainly can tweet it out. Just tag SFM Radio, as many people are doing right away, and then tag me, Ashraf Garda, to use that hashtag, the National Pulse. Some of the one-worders: shattered, unprecedented, ridiculous, disappointing, reality. That's just some of it. There's a whole lot more, of course, right? Let's now get to the opinion of the COSATU's parliamentary coordinator, Matthew Parks. Matthew, good chatting to you. Hi.
Hi, how's it? Thanks for having us.
Yeah, very good. So, how's it is like a cute word to use in the context of what we're going through. Perhaps let me start with this here. What's your one word, Matthew, in terms of your reaction to the postponement of the budget speech?
We're happy. There was no way, and we had warned government, there was no way we could support a VAT hike. Workers would reject that. Society is exhausted, is fed up. So workers are struggling to cope with the rising cost of living, with electricity prices, with fuel hikes, with inflation and so forth. And I think we're glad that common sense and sobriety has prevailed, that we didn't rush a budget which society was going to reject, which was going to inflict pain on people. So we have tabled proposals to government on alternatives, and there's many good provisions in the budget that we had campaigned for, so we're pleased with those. We don't want to see those being lost, but we need to find a solution to the revenue pressures. And I think for us the simple solution is we have a wonderful institution run by South African public servants called the South African Revenue Service. And these workers have done an amazing job at SARS in turning it around from when it was at the center of the state capture project under the Zuma administration, where revenue was imploding deliberately, and they managed to turn SARS around, rebuild it. They've removed corrupt elements, they've appointed competent management, they have filled critical vacancies, they have invested in the infrastructure of SARS, and as a consequence, tax compliance has risen from 61 to 64%. As SARS has said, when we've engaged with them, they can give an additional 60 billion rand in revenue if we give them another 3 billion rand. So I think for us, that's the simple solution. Give SARS the tools it needs to enforce tax compliance, to make sure that those who dodge taxes pay their fair share, and stop squeezing those who comply and try to force more out of them. So we hope that in this, 2 weeks, that common sense will prevail. We think it can as a simple solution, but we'd rather get it done right and not inflict more pain upon working class communities who have just tolerated too much.
So, government's been very clear. Essentially, for those who are unclear about it, bottom line is government is saying, we don't have the money. And the only way we can be able to find the money to be able to provide the essential services that we all talk about daily is find new ways, according to government now. And that would mean, raising VAT from 15 to 17%. Now, your thoughts immediately was happy. That means you completely oppose it, right? Are you surprised? So, I understand that you've lobbied, you have lobbied government, right, about this position, right? Are you surprised that it's come this late in the day? That means, I understand there was a cabinet meeting this morning, which means obviously the parties that make up the GNU that had to thresh out their differences, and it meant that just about all parties outside of the ANC, in particular the DA, refused to agree with the ANC position on this issue.
No, we knew this was going to happen, and we warned government this was going to happen. We warned them yesterday, we warned them last week, we warned them 2 weeks ago. They don't have the numbers, and we told them we also can't support it. And that's what we had said. Here's a simple alternative on the revenue front. You don't need new taxes. Just give SARS the tools it requires to enforce existing taxes. That's it. It's a very simple thing, but we can't keep looking for shortcuts, and we can't keep dumping the bill for state capture and corruption upon working class communities. We said as provoking a political firestorm, and society will reject it, and society is correctly fed up with mismanagement. And society also just simply is drowning in debt, is struggling with the cost of living. So for us, look, it's messy, it's clumsy, it's silly. We had warned them not to do this, but there's a chance. Mistakes provide a learning opportunity. So we hope what government will do now is to look at alternative revenue sources which don't hurt the poor, and which, in particular, let's just give SARS the tools it needs to enforce existing tax laws.
It sounds strange. I mean, I know the EFF similarly would have opposed an increase, and so has the MK party and maybe others. But they, at this point in time, almost less important as the GNU parties, right? And in this case, for many people, they're quite surprised that the number one opposer has been the DA, right? Now, here's the thoughts to you. What would have happened, in your opinion, assuming the DA, for whatever reason, supported the ANC position and therefore signed off today, and therefore we would have had an increase from 15 to 17%? What would have happened next to our country?
Well, look, if they had supported them, it would have gone through and they would have passed it in Parliament. But society would have rejected it, and politicians would have carried the political price as you head into local elections for that. And this is exactly what we had warned our ally, the ANC. You can't go to local elections and people, only thing they remember, they will forget all the good things you've done. What they will remember is the VAT hike. And all the good things you've done will be forgotten simply because you didn't want to look for alternative creative options which wouldn't hurt people. If it was COVID, you could have explained a tax hike, but not now when people are just simply struggling with the cost of living.
Right. We know your position. We know your suggestion as well in terms of effectively bolstering the SARS to actually be able to even raise more taxes, right? In this case, legally. So, however, what then do you think will be happening in the next 2 weeks? Because we know the date is set for March, I think the 12th of March, right? What do you think is going to happen between now and the 12th of March?
Look, they'll have to discuss issues. They must focus on the revenue issue. We hope they don't focus on the expenditure issue because there is many good things in the budget. We would want to see them be retained. And first, let's not redo the whole budget. Just focus on the revenue story. And we think there's options. There's the issue of SARS. We've also suggested on infrastructure, have an engagement with the PIC, with the DBSA, with the IDC. Can they help to carry the load of some of the infrastructure investments? They can do it on their own balance sheet. We said, why don't engage the PIC, the UF, on public employment programs? They can carry on their own balance sheet, but you can begin to kind of pool resources together to ease the pressure on the state without harming workers. And you could even engage the CETAs to say, can't they assist on some of the training programs? Because they have money, often is not spent properly. But let's look at creative options, but let's stop looking for shortcuts which hurt the poor.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Matthew Parks, the COSATU's parliamentary coordinator. I'm just wondering, so what would have happened if we had a situation where the DA would have supported the ANC? They would have had a majority then, right, within the GNU, and therefore a majority in the country to actually pass off this budget, and that would have been accepted. What would have been the public reaction then? For those of you who are talking about like flabbergasted and chaos, have they prevented, as the parties that did not sign the budget speech, the executive, have they prevented something even worse? Have they prevented can I say, the Marie Antoinette moment where people feel like, I can't believe it. Here's the government. They've mismanaged so much of our monies, and now they're completely short of money. They're broke, as we know, every single day. And now to be able to get more money, they don't borrow from each other or their own pockets. They go to the public, to you and I, and say, well, we're going to increase from 15 to 17%, which affects every one of us. Absolutely. That was their plan. What has been saved because of this? Interesting thought indeed. Right, we'll get the thoughts of the Black Sash after this.
Hey, listen up. With our Blue Sky offers, you can get your dream Ford with our optional service plan and our Ford Family Guarantee comes standard. Think extensive dealer network, genuine Ford parts, and express service. Visit your trusted Ford dealer for the complete Ford ownership experience. Limited time offer while stocks last. T&Cs apply.
V up your February with great value deals from Vodacom Business. Meet the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra featuring integrated Galaxy AI. Get it on a Red Business 1.5 gig plan for only 1,539 Rand per month over 24 months. Enhance your deal. Add 69 Rand extra per month and get the Samsung Galaxy Watch 7 eSIM. Available in-store and online. T's and C's apply. Further together. Vodacom Business.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, so of course we're going to get reaction from stakeholders, from political parties, from you, and from, civil society. We must get this on this unprecedented day where the national budget did not get delivered. Wow, how do you react to that, isn't it? Let's get the thoughts of Rachel Bukasa, the Executive Director of the Black Sash. Rachel, thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And I'm asking everybody this, and I must do the same with you. Just one word for you to reflect your emotions regarding the budget speech, no budget speech.
Look, it's really shocking, to be honest. It really speaks to a lack of commitment to making things work. So let's be straight. While we fully support DA's refusal to have the VAT increases, what we condemn, both on all political party side, is the 11th hour nature of this decision.
Why do you have any idea why it was that late? I mean, you're quite right. Negotiations take place, people argue, but this is set in stone. This type of this date was set in stone. We all knew that, right? Why do you think it took that long? Besides the obvious thing, which is that the parties vehemently opposed each other on this position.
Look, this speaks to political infighting at the center of this. And this is highly problematic because while this is happening, what it means on the ground is that key decisions, there's a lot of uncertainty around some key social protection mechanisms that needed to come into play after the President's State of the Nation address. So while this, I don't know whether it's up-wanting one another or whatever it is, while this carries on, what it means is that we essentially have lack of decisions on the ground and people living in uncertain times.
Okay, you said you opposed the VAT. Let me not assume why you opposed it. You tell me why.
I think generally we agree that there are other ways this can be looked at. And I heard the guest you had before saying, there were other options that our government refused to look at. We as civil society, as Black Sash, we've been in scenarios where we've said, let us give you other options, have a look. So we know that government normally pushes back at alternatives. So I can easily imagine that this is what's happened here. So where the easy route is to just increase tax and hope for the best. And so that is does not take into consideration the impact it's going to have on the middle class person and on the person on the ground. And so we can't just make decisions like that, not because it's the only options we have, but because we don't want to look at other considerations. And for that purpose, we deeply, deeply disagree with the proposed VAT increase.
Okay, what for you were the other considerations that Black Sash would have put forward?
Well, there are processes in terms of how this budget speech happened. There are votes that need to go. There's an entire transparent process. One could argue about the issue of, whether should DA have gone in, voted no, and allowed the other party to cast their vote, and then we take it from there. Because what has happened now means that it's uncertain whether on the 12th of March we will have a continuation. Because what prevents the 12th of March for there not to be consensus is this. There are processes in place, and we encourage all parties to come to the table and follow these processes, even if it means you disagree on fundamental elements of it. But a cancellation was not the answer because there are processes to deal with disagreements like this.
So what then are the implications of the postponement?
So on the ground, because that's the area I specialize in, what it essentially means is that there aren't now clear timelines and frameworks in terms of the HRD grant, in terms of the basic income support grant. We have other issues like social issues, education, social protection. None of those big decisions can be made because now the budget is not ready.
Okay. And just the last thing, I wasn't clear about your situation in terms of Black Sash. If not a VAT increase, right, and you said there were other alternative ways of doing so. We've heard the COSATU position. What would be your position on that?
Look, I think it's not a sort of a 1 second answer, but we've said to the Minister of Finance quite often that we have economists, we have done these models of how we can get this money back, whether it's a luxury goods tax, whether it's a little bit of increase on wealth tax or whatever it is, but there are other ways we can do this. But the finance minister's insistence on just having this tunnel vision and looking at numbers for the sake of numbers, but not as a reflection of people on the ground, is really problematic for us. And I'm sure Black Sash is not the only organization, as we heard from Kasatu, that has said there are alternatives. Just listen. You don't have to agree, but listen. And then if we're crazy, you can go ahead. But the refusal to do that shows that the Minister of Finance is just seeing this as black and white with numbers, but not seeing the reality on the ground and the impact it will have for those who cannot absorb a 2% increase on that.
Okay, that's where we'll leave it. Rachel Bukasa, thank you for your time. Rachel is the Executive Director of the Black Sash. And there you are. I mean, here's the thoughts to you, right? So government is effectively saying we have no money, right? And that we need more money to be able to meet out all the services that we should be meeting, and all the monies have gone into wherever, right? And they decided in their wisdom that the way to do it was to punish us by another 2%. That's really the essence of the story, isn't it? What do you think about it? Just give me your one word. If you're texting us on WhatsApp, one word, no long story, one word, 0614 104 107, one word to reflect your emotions. However, you are WhatsApping as well. Keep it up to 30 seconds, please, if you're WhatsApping. Let's hear it.
Ashraf Butigodlo from Taungen Kalamachonisa. Really, this is disappointing. I was not expecting this to happen. I asked myself a question: when exactly is the budget speech drafted? Is it drafted before the speech of the president or after the speech of the president? When exactly is it drafted? Really, this is humiliating and even shows very well that the GNU is not working together. Thank you.
Well, it may show that, what it does show you, that anybody who thought that all the parties in the GNU always are going to agree with each other, and therefore some people would say the DA would be selling out by, being partners with the ANC, or the ANC would be selling out by being partners with the DA. What's very clear is they partners, but they partners that disagree very, very often. And here's another example of it.
Hi, Adro. I'm Tulani Kunene from Newcastle. Adro, if you understand, even the ANC is against to postpone. Some members of the ANC, they are against about the postponement. So it looks like Ramaphosa and Fikile Mbalula, his own GNU, will continue without the members of the ANC. Why Mashali asked them to vote, then he ignore, because they know the ANC, all of them, they don't want this thing to postpone. Thank you.
But you see the problem, you say ANC, like some disagree, some we don't have the numbers, if there's is it 20 people, 30 people, how many of them disagrees or how many of them agree?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. One word to describe this budget speech: excellent, and thanks to the Democratic Alliance. Imagine what inflation was going to look like. The price of food and services was going to go up by 2%. So, and I would also like to be a bit controversial, Ashraf, and say that if they applying or intending to implement austerity measures, they must do so on this child support grant, in that only one child must receive that money and not women with more than one child. I think it is unfair for the taxpayer to take care of other people's children. It is a privilege, not a right. Thanks, Lionel Whitbank.
Okay, got that line. Lionel effectively praised to the DA. I mean, would you concede it? And I understand that people have, very different ideological positions listening to the show. But in doing that, do you concede that if you were opposing the VAT increase by 2 further points, right, would you then concede the DA played a huge role in it not happening? And what do you feel about them now?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Makwarela Shinyazo from Tembo. One word that I would describe this budget speech delay, I would say, is an embarrassment. This is an embarrassment to the nation, because all of these parties in GNU, they only prioritize their party politics rather than the citizens of this country. This is a huge embarrassment. Thank you very much.
But do you think that's the case, that it's been a case of prioritizing party politics or prioritizing you in saying we don't want the poor the majority of the country to be able to pay another 2% VAT. Where's the priority here? Think about that. So much to consider. Send me more of your one-worders. And if you are WhatsApping, please limit it to 30 seconds. Please. Let's get the news. It's 4 o'clock.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories at 4. Budget speech now set for 12 March, and SARS is set to sell Premier Soccer League club Royal AM. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good afternoon. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says Cabinet is due to hold further discussions in order to find each other so that a newly agreed on budget could be tabled on March 12th. This allows dramatic scenes in Cape Town, where Godongwana was unable to table the 2025 budget due to disagreements within the Government of National Unity Partners. Godongwana elaborates.
Section 27 of the Public Finance Management Act requires that the annual budget be tabled prior to the start of the financial year, or in exceptional circumstances on a date as soon as possible after the start of the financial year, as the Minister of Finance may determine. Therefore, a further discussion in Cabinet will take place in preparation for a new or amended budget to be tabled on the 12th of March 2025. That's your next date for the new budget.
EFF leader Julius Malema has accused Parliament Speaker Thoko Didiza of reducing the country's budget to party politics. He was reacting to Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's inability to table the 2025 budget due to disagreements within the GNU parties. The sitting has been postponed to the 12th of March. Malema accused the executive of failing South Africans, adding that this would sully Didiza's legally as Speaker.
It is going to be your legacy, Speaker, that during your tenure, Parliament could not debate and adopt budget. You are now subjecting the budget of South Africa to party politics when the budget is supposed to be above party politics. Let the budget be presented here and let Parliament decide that this is the decision that we are taking as Parliament, whether to accept or not. You cannot come here and say confidently that the parties in the executive are not agreeing. What is that? We don't have parties in the executive. We've got the executive.
The National African Federation Chamber of Commerce in the Free State says it wants to see the Mangaung Metro turn into a construction site. The Chamber's provincial chairperson, Tsepo Mataba, says this will address joblessness in the metro and aid small business development. He adds that the two-day investment summit currently being held in Bloemfontein comes at the right time for economic growth.
We are very excited about the investment summit as a way of trying to open up to investment to different stakeholders to partake in the development of the city, and the fact that the city has released pockets of land for development, like Airport Note and many others. We are very excited to partake in such opportunities and partner and collaborate with many other investors from around and outside the province and the country. So for us, that is very exciting.
The South African Revenue Service is set to sell Premier Soccer League club Royal AM, with the sale expected to come at a significant discount compared to the price its owner, Sean Mamkhize, paid for the team in 2021. The club's troubled history, including mounting debts and poor league performance, have led to its seizure by SARS due to Mkhize's alleged tax liabilities of around 40 million rand. The club's future is uncertain as potential buyers take on a range of issues alongside the team's potential relegation threat. Idiski Media co-founder Nkululeko Ngewe explains.
We are in the territory where, including the people who are listening to this broadcast, normal millionaires can no longer own Premier Soccer League teams. It is very expensive. It means, in effect, that we will always have people who are called tenderpreneurs owning football clubs because the price on the ticket is very expensive. You cannot have 50 million and expect to own a Premier Soccer League club. We've learned this lesson with Swallows, and they told us that they had money problems. We've learned this lesson with other clubs as well, and that's why there's this buying and selling of statuses all the time. Just because I have 10 million and I love football, unfortunately, that no longer qualifies to own a Premier Soccer League club.
The latest round of EU sanctions will target Russia's lucrative aluminium sector and what's come to be known as Russia's shadow fleet. The measures will formally be announced on Monday, which is the third anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The BBC's Sasha Sklita has the details.
Brussels' 16th round of sanctions on Russia comes as President Trump has undercut Kyiv and his European backers by going it alone with Vladimir Putin to end the war. European countries are scrambling to make their voices heard so that it doesn't look like Moscow is being rewarded for its invasion. Apart from hitting Russia's aluminium sector, the new sanctions blacklist 73 aging vessels from its so-called shadow fleet, used to circumvent restrictions on oil exports.
Recapping the top story, EFF leader Julius Malema has accused Parliament Speaker Toko Didiza of reducing the country's budget to party politics. He was reacting to Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's inability to table the 2025 budget due to disagreements within the GNU parties. I am Ondilambana for SAFM News Headlines at 4:30.
In sports this hour, Pakistan 14 for 1 after 5 overs, needing 307 runs to win against New Zealand in the opening Champions Trophy match, and Gallants hoping to pull a Galaxy on Mamelodi Sundowns. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N12 westbound queuing towards the R554 Lenasia exit, and Flowey Street in Pretoria is closed at Uppies River Bridge due to flooding. In KZN, the N2 southbound slow moving towards Spaghetti Junction. The M35 in Umlazi has a landslide incident reported near Pilani Mall, so expect delays and diversions. And northwest, the R511 has flooding reported between Brits and Beesterkraal. In Cape Town, Kloofnik Road outbound slow moving through Tamboerskloof, and Borchards Quarry Road in the Airport Industria has a vehicle fire incident reported near Montreal Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Outsurance has another random fact for you. In 1998, a kid's 20 Rand pocket money meant a shopping spree at the school tuck shop. Now, they need about 70 Rand. The cost of living has gone up, but Outsurance is still committed to giving you big savings on your car insurance. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754 to switch and save today. Let's hear what real Outsurance clients have to say.
When you deal with Outsurance, it is effortless. They treated us like human beings.
With Outsurance, you always get something out. Outsurance has paid out more than 6 billion Rand in out bonuses. That's more than any other insurer.
With Outsurance, when you look at it, it sounds too good to be true, but it's good. It's true.
SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
In the Arena is a docu-series that takes an in-depth look at the life and career of the legendary tennis player Serena Williams, offering a behind-the-scenes glimpse into her journey, both on and off the court. It explores her rise to tennis dominance, challenges, and personal experiences. Do not miss out on a great story of incredible impact. Catch In the Arena on Saturdays at 3 p.m. on SABC3. Alternatively, at 9 p.m. on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturdays and Thursdays. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
What if I asked you what moves the National Pulse today? It is the one thing that has not moved. It's the budget speech. Should have been tabled, but will now be tabled and accepted, we think, on the 12th of March. We think, isn't it? Unprecedented. It's never happened before, certainly not in democratic South Africa. Although, some may say, hold it, you know what? Well, we're getting two streams of opinion. The one is like disaster, circus, joke, mess. And the other is like, what maturity? This is an example of consensus-based politics. Never again, not for now, will we have a situation where parties can do simply what they want. There are sufficient checks and balances within the GNU that means that parties have to hold each other in check. And is that a good thing or not? Well, it should be, isn't it? Your one word to describe the budget speech, no budget speech, you tell me. 086 000 2032. I'll take your calls as soon as I can. But you can WhatsApp right away, text or voice note 0614 104 107. And do use that social media option on the X platform. Just tweet us. Use the hashtag The National Pulse. Right, we should be chatting. I want to just double check. In fact, we're going to get further. What we'll do is, let's do this. We're going to chat to Asanda Ingwasheng in a few minutes' time. But for now, let's just recap some of the drama that's happened today. So, the budget speech was postponed essentially because the parties failed to reach agreement. Now, the Minister of Finance didn't deliver his budget speech, but afterwards, he then faced the media. At the time in Parliament, when he didn't deliver his budget speech, there was huge opposition to that, to say, why can't he formally explain why it's not been done and explain the differences of the parties, and that's why the executive didn't sign off, and that's essentially why it was not done. So he didn't do that then. He did it later, however, when he addressed the media, and this is what he said.
Texts. I'm going to read the statement. The annual budget is tabled by the Minister of Finance, but it requires the deliberations of the Cabinet before it is tabled in the National Assembly. Cabinet considered that although the tabling of the 2025 budget was scheduled for release at 2 p.m. on the 19th of February, a postponement is needed to allow for further deliberations to take place on the budget. Cabinet is united in the view that the budget must strike a balance between the interests of the public, economic growth, and fiscal sustainability. Furthermore, budget is produced and presented before the National Assembly according to rules outlined in the Public Finance Management Act. Section 27 of the Public Finance Management Act requires that the annual budget be tabled prior to the start of the financial year or, in exceptional circumstances, on a date as soon as possible after the start of the financial year, as the Minister of Finance may determine. Therefore, further discussion in Cabinet will take place in preparation for a new or amended budget to be tabled on the 12th of March 2025.
Right, there's one thought, of course. There's lots of different opinions about this one. Now, Julius Malema, at the time when the Speaker made the point that it's been postponed to a date sometime in March, well, he got up as the leader of the EFF and made this point about linking the budget speech and party politics and how they should not mix.
Unprecedented. And this is not a practice that we want to set for this parliament. It is going to be your legacy, Speaker, that during your tenure, Parliament could not debate and adopt budget. We are saying to you, you are denying this body an opportunity to be receiving a budget, debate it, accept it, or reject it. You are now subjecting the budget of South Africa to party politics when the budget is supposed to be above party politics. Let the budget be presented here and let Parliament decide that this is the decision that we are taking as Parliament, or whether to accept or not. You cannot come here and say confidently that the parties in the executive are not agreeing. What is that? We don't have parties in the executive. We've got the executive. The executive must come here and present the budget, and this Parliament must decide whether we adopt that budget or not. You are denying the people of South Africa to see what is happening in this government. There is no government. It has collapsed. It has no capacity to present a budget. Thank you.
And there's more. So in further comments, here's one from the leader of the Build One South Africa party or movement, Musi Maimane, who was very clear about wanting to know when that budget speech will then finally be delivered.
It does mark a historic day. What I do believe is absolutely important is that what we do in this House is guided by legislation. And therefore the Money Bills and Related Matters Act does compel us as to a particular timeline as to when the budget is going to be tabled, what committees are meant to process it, and how that goes. I want to appeal to you as the Speaker. Firstly, we have raised continuously in this House through the Appropriations Committee about how truncated the time is for the processing of the budget. So any natural delay that emerges as a function of today does in fact mean that Parliament is placed under pressure in not being able to consult with the people, for this is where the people are represented. So may I ask that it must not be an arbitrary decision as to when this must be tabled. We must be given a firm date so that we can work the timetable consistent with law. Otherwise, the disagreement that took place today will end up in the court of law, and we as Parliament will be held accountable for that. So let me propose that we get a firm date. We also get the tabling, as the President has promised, of the medium-term plan that he announced, so that we have a framework within which to interpret the budget from. So, Speaker, let us stick to our own laws. Otherwise, we will be inconsistent with that, and the people of South Africa will hold us accountable for that. Thank you very much.
Well, we now know that that budget speech will be delivered on the 12th of March, I think. Okay. The ATM leader is Vuyo Zungula, who also commented on the postponement and had further things that needed to be said.
Who decide? Because you are out the chief whips to decide for the entire parliament, it is problematic. Secondly, you cannot allow a case of the incompetence of the executive, even at the incompetence of parliament. The executive did not know yesterday that there's going to be a budget today, and there's no agreement in the so-called GNU. Therefore, the executive, the Minister of Finance, must come here, present what he has, and let us, as the people, as the representatives of the people, decide for the people. This notion, Speaker, of saying we want to assure the markets and all of these things, it is problematic. This House does not belong to the markets. It belongs to the people. We are the representatives of the people. Masive, Minister of Finance, presenting what he has. And then the parties here can be seen whether they are in support or they are not in support. Do not deny the parties an opportunity of standing and clearly showing where they stand. And also an indefinite postponement is not going to be acceptable. Because if let us wait for an indefinite postponement, what does that mean? And what happens if after that indefinite postponement, they come back again and they let's postpone again? We're going to have more and more postponements. Makazi apa, sizele lonto apa.
So there are a range of opinions, and I will make sure that we have enough time to listen to all your comments, because there are so many people who are commenting on that one word that for you, your emotional response to the postponement of the budget speech. And I can tell you now, some of them are very complimentary and others are not. Depends which way you consider it, right? Well, this is the National Pulse. So what's your pulse rate telling you now?
Okay, Lehasa, we are recording 3, 2, 1, go.
A cold case is opened 39 years later after the body of a young man is discovered in a derelict building. There are 4 suspects. Suspect 1, a clergyman. Suspect 2, an eminent entrepreneur.
I really, those people are always shady.
Suspect 3, a community worker.
Hey, what are you saying?
And suspect 4, a wheelchair-bound husband caring for his wife.
Hey, and Nevele, you can't.
Each has a secret to hide. As their lies unravel, the people that they love the most begin to wonder what else they might be capable of. Nothing in this case is black and white. Can you ever really know the people closest to you? What secrets have they buried? Tune into Unforgotten Season 1, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Starts 24 February only on S3. Tabo, don't tell me that the script freaked you out. Where are you?
Right now, amongst the many things you may consider, what about 43-year-old Jan? So he loves Outsurance Essential. Why? Well, because it's the low-cost insurance made for older cars. For his 2005 Corsa 1.6 Sport, remember that car? He only pays 350 Rand a month. With Outsurance Essential, accident claims are paid in cash, so you can choose the panel beater you want to use. Now, top this up with a motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns. Get savings with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rands. SMS car to 43187. Got it? Car 43187. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's and information online.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, I want to hear what you have to say, so let's do this right away.
Hi, Ashraf. There's a lot to say about this issue, but the main point I want to make is that things should not be taken at face value in politics or in public finance. Historically, the DA has supported VAT increases over wealth taxes or increases in income taxes for the highest earners. It's also been in favor of more conservative fiscal metrics and expenditure cuts. So what the DA should be asked is, if you were against the the alleged 2 percentage point increase in VAT, what was your actual position on these issues?
Well, it's something that we will ask them, and what would be their alternative proposal, isn't it? Thank you for that consideration. Right, your one word.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. One word. The Minister of Finance refused to allocate this budget because of President Ramaphosa said a lot of things. It will create jobs. I think into that budget speech, there is no money. So Minister of Finance said, no, I'm not going to share this budget speech with the people of South Africa. I'm not going to look like a stupid. President must come to account. In Matosana.
I don't know whether we're misinterpreting this. I don't think it's the Minister of Finance's call. I think the executive that votes in a budget speech, which means the cabinet of the different parties of the GNU, including the ANC and the DA and many others too, they did not agree because the ANC, which is part of the Minister's of Finance's party, wanted to increase the budget, the VAT by 2%. It was the other parties that refused, and therefore that could not be passed. That's the story. Sitembile in Flagstaff, go for it. Hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you?
Yeah, very good indeed. What's your point?
My point is that I think the postponement is healthy. I'll tell you why. Obviously, Ashraf, there was no a consensus between the parties that are in the GNU. And if there was no agreement about that 2% or that proposed 2% hike in that VAT, they needed to get enough time to iron out whatever differences, that they have. And of course, it works perfectly for us as the masses of this country. Remember, the basic wage in South Africa remains stagnant, Ashraf. The hourly rate to the basic wage is still below 30 rand.
Yeah.
So with that VAT added to that, and of course, listen, Ashraf, the loaf of bread in South Africa is just below 20 rand. So with that VAT added to that bread, how much will that loaf of bread be?
Yeah, although, some of it is zero rated, you'd just be aware of that. But, I get your point. We know that. I think everybody agrees with you, Sitembile. Limited that, we all agree that this is not something that we could afford. But it's very clear. We're only having it. We've had conversations on the show in the last few weeks. We speak to the Minister of Health to say, why can't the doctors get jobs? He's like, Ashraf, we don't have the budget. We speak to the Education Department about teachers. We don't have the budget. We talk about nurses. We don't have the budget. We speak to Joburg City about water issues. We don't have the budget. We can go on across the board. We don't have the budget. Every day we hear examples of government or its state institutions at local level unable to deliver the most basic service delivery. We're not talking about buying a new aircraft or something like that for us. We're talking about basic things. They don't have the budget. So there's been massive mismanagement. We've had poor growth, negative growth, and therefore the country has got no money. I mean, think about families. We all have problems with, meeting budgets. So they have a problem. The difference is they said, let's up the VAT. That will solve the problem. But clearly, it hasn't, has it? Right, there's more thoughts about just how this interprets out with regard to the GNU. Thanks for those that are voice noting below 30 seconds. I really appreciate that.
Sir, you really are a champion of this GNU. This is just a disaster. You can never, ever think GA will think of the poor people of this country. It's just a disastrous situation that exposes who these people are.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly not championing one or the other. I'm certainly reflecting what happened on the day. If today was an example of the ANC had 50% in the last election, then this 2% extra would have been passed. That's a fact. It is only because the ANC got less than 50% that other parties, whether they were the GNU or coalition, whichever way you call it, had a situation where they could put the spoke in and ensure it didn't get passed. The question is now, what happens next?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Sakile Ntsugwini from Bamhlabialengan. Ashraf, today we have experienced the best of the GNU. Now the ANC will learn to consult with other GNU members before they may come to any conclusions regarding the governance of the country. Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're getting such reaction. And, the two broad thoughts is, one is this is an absolute embarrassment. And the other is, this is a maturity of a democracy, because I do understand there are many other, budget speech deliveries in other parts of the world that don't take place, that get postponed because they're unable to reach consensus. So it shows you that it's very difficult for parties that are ideologically opposed to each other, even though they are chommies, put it that way, as part of a GNU, to always agree. And when they disagree with each other, they make it known. So in a case like this, the biggest question is, how did it get to this late in the day that even this morning an executive meeting had to take place to try and thresh it out when the ANC found out that the DA were not going to side with them? Why did it get to that late? I mean, here's a thought. I see Sizwe Mpofu Walsh tweeting saying it's a shambles over the budget. Just shows you that beyond the PR, this coalition is still far from cohering around a substantive agenda. Imbali Ntuli saying, where is the embargoed statement? I would like to see what we were in for aside from the VAT increase. We don't really know now, do we? Okay, there's more than the one word that describes the budget.
Hi, Ashraf. My one word to describe the whole debacle with the budget is shambolic. And my one word to describe our government at this moment is arrogant.
Shambolic and arrogant. Okay. And there's more. This is the issue about the tax base, right? Well, let me get that right. Okay.
Hey Ashraf, it's William from East London, on the way from Alice to East London at the moment. Great show. Something I think that they should really look at is the tax-paying base. It's becoming smaller and smaller. Why not just increase VAT to 30% or 25% and do away with income tax? In that way, you get everybody in the country paying tax. That would be a much easier way and fairer way to do it.
Well, look, I don't have the numbers. If you're saying, increase VAT to 30% and no other taxes, whether that works out, ultimately you're still paying tax. You still will be paying taxes. Here's another comment from Fidel Haffiji, the writer from the Daily Maverick, saying, well, this month is meant to be President Ramaphosa's big global host month. The mess is real. The EU Commission is in town to seal a big partnership tomorrow. The G20 foreign minister meeting starts. Next week, the G20 finance ministers and the deputy central governors are here. So much worrying in that the government briefing, a floundering and wounded finance minister, a clear rupture between him and the SARS commissioner, and there's more. So I'll leave it at that, but that's further comments. Maybe one more I can pick up on regarding the African National Congress.
Hello, Ashraf, Anonymous in the Eastern Cape. Number one, a move in the right direction and a victory for democracy when we see a budget speech being postponed, because the Parliament can no longer be used just to rubber stamp simply because the ANC has the majority. So victory for democracy on that one. The second one, the ANC does have the tendency of, instead of solving the real problems on the ground, they rather just want to come to us to tax us, getting us further and further into hard living. Thank you.
Well, they were hard living. Well, maybe that point is so important that in the light of what has happened now, that no party now can take the other parties for granted because they know that this is what's going to happen in the future. So now if they have a disagreement, they can't say, well, I'm sure they're going to sign anyway because they know they have to, because it'll be so awkward and embarrassing if they don't. Now they're going to have to thresh out a deal a while earlier in this case, or else, isn't it? Big lesson learned. On the line, Bana's got the news headlines. It's 4:30.
Thank you, Ashraf. In the news headlines, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says Cabinet is due to hold further discussions in order to find each other so that a newly agreed on budget could be tabled on March 12th. 5 accused drug lords have briefly appeared in the Groblersdal Magistrate Court in Limpopo, and an urban district in the Philippines is offering a reward to people who catch mosquitoes in order to curb the spread of a dengue fever. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Hose.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha.
Hi everyone, my name is Itumele Nkune, SABC Sport football analyst. When I feel down and I listen to gospel, it gives me motivation. I'm a person who loves all genres. If I was a chef, my favorite meal that I would prepare would be pap, cabbage, meaty bones, with a bit of acha on the side. My favorite language is Portuguese. Bom dia, como está? Estou bem. What I like about SABC Sport is they give you the platform and the permission to be yourself and speak any language.
Catch the ever-passionate Itumele Nkune's analysis of Bola Leju on match days, live on Latuma. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
So to me, we don't have the budget speech, but we do have cricket.
We do have cricket, an update on the Champions Trophy, which is officially underway. And New Zealand posted 320 for 5 in their 50 overs against Pakistan, who won the toss, and they elected to bat first in the opening match of the Champions Trophy. Tom Latham top scored with 118 off 104 balls, with Naseem Shah and Haris Rauf taking 2 wickets each. The last time I checked, Pakistan are sitting on 29 for 2 after 11 overs, and they need 292 runs in 38 overs to win. They're looking to kick off this campaign obviously on a high as the hosts, and then tomorrow favourites India open their Champions Trophy campaign against Bangladesh in Dubai. And in terms of South Africa, the Proteas play on Friday and they're playing against Afghanistan. Then there's one day cup action. The Knights posted 247 for 7 in their 50 overs. This is after the Warriors won the toss and elected to bowl first. Dolphins posting 174 all out after winning the toss and opting to bat against the Rocks. And Western Province decided to bat after winning the toss, and they posted 145 all out against Northwest. The Northwest are currently sitting on 4 for no loss after 1 over. Meanwhile, DP World Lions coach Russell Domingo says that he expects a tough clash against the Titans in their second one-day cup fixture on Friday at the Supersport Park. The Lions will look to maintain their winning momentum coming from an away win against the defending champions Western Province by 40 runs, and Domingo believes that it will take showing up in big matches to win the 2025 championship.
Match against the Titans at the Centurion Park, always going to be tough. They've got some match winners. Davis is in good form. Rwanda Pretoria has had an amazing SAT20. Dejan Galem's been playing really well. So we know it's going to be a tough encounter, and we expect nothing less. We've had some amazing games against them this season, and we know this next one's going to be equally tough. So really excited by it, and know that if we want to win this competition, we've got to beat teams like the Titans. So that's a big test for us.
Moving on to football, Marumo Gallants defender Siyabonga Nhlapo says that they plan to do exactly as what TS Galaxy did to claim a 1-0 win over Mamelodi Sundowns. Gallants host the Brazilians in the Betway Premiership match at Dr. Molemela Stadium tonight, and that is at 7:30. The sides head into the game with different objectives. Sundowns looking to extend their lead at the top, with Gallants looking to be safe from relegation zone as they are 14th on the log. In other fixtures tonight, Golden Arrows and Orlando Pirates will battle it out for 3 points at the Sugar Ray Xulu Stadium. Sekhukhune United hosting AmaZulu, with all those games starting at 7:30. Elsewhere, Champions League and Manchester City's Bernardo Silva says that there's no room for errors from their side in their must-win second leg of the Champions League knockout phase against Real Madrid. City have a mountain to climb to overturn last week's 3-2 defeat at Etihad.
When a team is so successful as ours was in the last 7 to 8 seasons, you lose a few games, you're not used to it, you have a bad season, you have a bad few months, and we don't accept it. We don't accept the situation, we don't take well losing, not winning, and winning, but we're not in the same dark place, especially personally, that I was feeling like we were in, I would say, November.
Well, in other fixtures, Borussia Dortmund will try to avoid one of the greatest European upsets in history when they host Sporting Lisbon. They won 3-0 in the first leg. Paris Saint-Germain welcome Brest at Parc des Princes to continue with winning ways from their 3-0 first win leg. And PSV Eindhoven face Juventus, hoping to overturn a 2-1 loss last week. Ashraf, just before I go, have you ever heard of a sport called Hyrox? So, Hyrox is a new sport on the rise, and it's basically a global fitness race which combines running and functional workouts. And Johannesburg is going to host its first Hyrox competition. This is happening on the 1st of March at Expo Center, and you'll just hear a bit more about it in the next hour, explaining what exactly is the sport.
And you're the new global ambassador for it, tell me.
Me?
Yeah.
I wish.
Well, you see, if you wish, there we go. It may just happen if you wish. Tell me more from you and that new, I can't even remember the name of the sport, in the next hour.
Amidst misinformation and disinformation, where can we find reliable news? Turn to radio, your trusted source for truthful updates. For over 3 decades, we've upheld integrity as a signatory to the BCCSA Broadcasting Code of Conduct. Count on us for news you can trust. Say no to fake news. Radio, keeping it real since day one. A message from the National Association of Broadcasters. Tune in, trust, and stay informed.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, in Johannesburg, the N3 southbound in Bedfordview queuing towards Van Buren Road. The N12 westbound has a crash before the R554 Lenasia exit, and the R101 in Hammanskraal has flooding reported at Ramotse, so please approach with caution. In KZN, Old North Coast Road is closed just north of Columbine Place, and Umgeni Road westbound is slow moving through Springfield Park. In the northwest, the R511 has flooding reported between Brits and Beesterkraal. In Cape Town, congestion with slow moving traffic reported through the city centre area, and Batenhag Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's get all the budget reaction. Now I joke. Makwe Masilela with us, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Goodness, Makwe, you had to rewrite your entire script as far as I'm concerned. You must have all planned it today and then just threw it all away. What are we going to talk about?
We're looking at Glencoe. Good afternoon to you and to the listeners, which is down 5.5%. Operationally, 2024 was a strong year. The decline in the adjusted overall financial performance particularly within the industrial segment, was mainly a function of lower average energy and coal price year over year. Revenue up 6%, but overall the earnings were down 16%. And in an effort, Ashraf, to support shareholder returns, Glencore announced a $2.2 billion capital return program consisting of $1.2 billion base dividend and a $1 billion share buyback to be completed by August. And yes, Ashraf, we opened up 0.1% and the rand was 0.2% firmer against the dollar. That was ahead of the much-awaited budget speech, but was postponed, and the rand knee-jerk reaction was to weaken over 1% and bonds fell. And Ashraf, if 2% VAT increase was supposed to be implemented, I think the disagreement is good for consumers, as consumers are already under strain. And remember, the SARS commissioner himself said earlier this week that the last VAT increase didn't yield what was expected. They still needed to invest and improve SARS systems, which, by the way, are not terrible, but can be improved. And Trump's plans to impose tariffs on cars, chips, and drug imports of around 25%, which are with an announcement expected early on the 2nd of April this year. That is widening his trade war, and market participants also waiting for Fed minutes, looking for hints on interest rate path after last week's mixed consumer and producer inflation. By the way, our January consumer inflation was supposed to be released today, but was moved to next Wednesday. But our December retail sales increased by 3.1% after jumping 7.6% in November. And oil is edging higher on supply concerns, while traders 6P stocks clarity. Brent crude is up 1% at $76 a barrel. Yellow metal is steady after U.S. agreed to conduct more discussions with Russia on ending the war in Ukraine. We see gold is up 0.1% at $2,939, but platinum is down 1% at $974. Global markets generally are in the red, with the local bourse down 0.6%, and we've been dragged mainly by our resources, which are down 2%. As I said earlier, the rand has weakened over 1% compared to the US dollar is now 18.58 and 23.36 against the pound and 19.37 against the euro.
Perfect. Right, now I'll leave it to you to rewrite your script for whatever else you're going to do for the rest of the afternoon, Makwe. I don't know how you guys coped, but I'm sure you somehow just had to work around it. Makwe Masilela, thanks for your time. Much appreciated. I mean, that's really the issue, isn't it? Every one of these finance people and people who delved in the budget, for them it was their cup final day, as we discussed. And suddenly, like an hour before the cup final, or on cup final, 10 minutes into the game, you get the referee saying, the game has been postponed. How do they plan? Think about that. More thoughts from you. This is the National Pulse.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Ron, I tell you what, we're going to certainly speak to some of the political parties as well as soon as we can get them on board later on. So do stay tuned for all of that and your opinions. But things are just chopping and changing by the minute, which is the nature of things when things like a budget speech gets changed at the 11th hour, right? So let's try and understand what really happened and what are the implications. Asanda Ingwasheng is a political analyst. And Asanda, first of all, thanks for connecting to us here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And I have to indulge you because I've asked everybody else this. Your one word, just one word, to describe your emotions on hearing of the postponement of the budget speech.
It's chaos.
Chaos. Okay, got that. Right. Now let's move on, right? Help us understand what has actually happened.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things that have happened which are both good and bad. So the first is that it is a good thing that we live in a country where the parliament can sit and make a decision to suspend a budget speech if they feel like they are not in agreement. We should never be a country that moves on and continues with things when people in parliament don't necessarily agree on them. That's the entire point of parliament, to be able to debate. They were never meant to be a rubber stamping institution. It's just that we had an ANC majority, and so anything the ANC wanted, they got. And this is the first time. It's the first GNU budget. It's the first, GNU government coming together to be able to put together this budget properly in a way that hasn't happened before. And so we shouldn't be surprised when new, weird, and wonderful and interesting things are happening. At the same time, though, it does raise question about Parliament's kind of role as the legislature vis-a-vis the role of the cabinet or executive, and whether the checks and balances are checking and balancing, and whether we are seeing a situation where the GNU formation has now become almost like a super voter within Parliament that has the power to suspend, to shut down, and to stop things regardless of what others think. So we've heard, for instance, that the MKP and the EFF were not necessarily happy with the potential of the postponement, and their voices weren't necessarily heard, and they didn't win the day. And I think we must understand that South Africa has a party political system that is proportional representation because we were seeking equity. And so what we wanted in the ideal world is that the voice of every single member of Parliament has equal weighting. There are no super voters. There are no people with an extraordinary vote that can change things. And so what has happened today does bring that into question, and it does make us ask the question of, is Parliament still the house for debate and still the house for equity within that vote?
Okay, sorry, carry on, continue.
And then the other thing that's coming up with the DA claiming that they are the reason that this was stopped, it's very problematic for me, because I don't think as a political party within a GNU they should be making such claims, even if they did whether they did or didn't, because all it does is that it kind of it tells us that they are struggling to find each other in the ways that they need to find each other, and they're struggling to reach consensus in time. So of course this is a diversity of political parties with diverse policies, sometimes divergent policies of the opposite, even though they agree on the neoliberal economic agenda. But by the time they come to us, by the time they come to Parliament, they need to have such consensus that what happened today could technically not be possible unless you have the opposition members and or something else that is revolutionary that can happen. And so there are question marks around the ability, particularly of the DA, to be able to contain themselves within the GNU. And I suspect that they have been frustrated potentially by jokes that people have been sending that they might as well be clad in ANC regalia because they are speaking like ANC comrades. And so I think they're trying to find a way to raise their hand and kind of above the water and say we are still the DA, we are still our own entity, while also being part of the GNU, which is the difficulty, right? How do you become fully part of this government formation and engage fully as a member in agreement with the government, while at the same time showcasing enough of your own unique identity so that come the municipal election, come 2029, voters will be able to pull you out of the crowd and see your unique standpoints. And that is the crisis that particularly the DA is in. And I think the last thing, though, is that what the purported leaked statement or speech that came out, what it shows and what it says to me, which is very concerning, is that we as ordinary South Africans are potentially being sacrificed for the ANC's own cowardice to deal with corruption. You have people in Parliament who are alleged to have been part of state capture. You have people within the ANC, within the AKP, within various political parties who are said to have been part of state capture, who have never seen the inside of a court case or the inside of a jail cell. And when you look at the numbers that they are alleged to have stolen, it really does not make sense. And if you look at somebody like Jacob Zuma, who, even if we argue that he was not directly involved, was at the helm when state capture happened, and so bears some responsibility, even if it's just moral responsibility. He continues to be able to continue with his life. He's been able to build a political party, and he continues to reap rewards from our own tax money, our own money, funding his salary and funding the salaries of those very politicians who have impoverished us. And now we are being called to go and refund these people yet again, and that is not okay. That should not be acceptable under any regime.
We could probably write a whole essay based upon just what you've said right now. Time is against us, as probably time is against the country anyway, right? So maybe you got a minute to answer this one, right? I'll probably answer a couple of things in one go. One is the principle of the government, right, or in this case the ANC part of the GNU, believing that we have no money because we don't have money, and they felt the way to solve the problem was the 2% increase, the VAT increase, that's the one thing, right? What are your thoughts on that? If we say no to that, where then do we get the money from, right? Because that money has to come from somewhere, if not from VAT, right? And the third part of it, you've already explained about the issue of the DA. I understand that part, right? The third part of it is in terms of the call even from the EFF to say the Minister of Finance had to come to Parliament and explain in Parliament, which is not the same as a media briefing, why that this Parliament, the budget speech was not adopted. What are your thoughts on that? You've got a minute in total to say that.
Well, I mean, I think it's ridiculous, as I've said, that we're sitting with if we go by what was leaked to be the budget speech, they're saying they were willing to give above inflation for social welfare, while going and hitting the very same poor people with a 2% increase on VAT. Because VAT, you must remember, VAT affects every single member of South Africa. We are already over indebted. People are barely hanging on by a thread to pay their bonds, to pay their car repayments, to pay their credit card bills, and everything in between, because our inflation has hit through the roof. We are in a globally economically unstable situation with what's happening in the United States, and so we could not afford this 2% increase that the ANC wanted. And it doesn't make sense to me how you're going to want to increase VAT by 2% in order to fund an increase to people who are on social grants.
Asanda, Asanda, just a one-line answer. We're out of time here. So you started by saying it's chaos. What then do we do next after the chaos? Just one line.
Well, chaos isn't necessarily a bad thing. Chaos is a good place to start to think about the fundamentals of what's good and what's important.
Let's leave it at that. Thank you so much. Chaos, not a bad thing. There we are.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Chili Boys have a top-class game plan to relocate from the bottom half. But Babina Noko prefer a position in the top 5. This is the Betway Premiership. United battles it out with United. Witness Mzansi's beautiful game. Chipa United FC versus Sikukune United FC. This Saturday, 22 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and at 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, further reaction as we would expect, isn't it? Let's talk about this now with Mielani Holeni, who's the local government expert with specialization in revenue management, governance, infrastructure delivery, and economic development. That could probably set you up as the Minister of Finance with all those qualifications. Mielani, I appreciate your time. Mielani, do I have you there? Hello? No, we may just have a problem with that. Do I have you there now, right?
And good afternoon to the listeners, and pleasure to speak to you this afternoon.
Okay, my standard question today, one word, just one word to describe the budget, no budget speech.
It's disappointing. It's something that, would not have expected in the 30 years of democracy. I believe that, the fact that, the day was set for budget, we want to understand, even if it was the framework that the government or the executive was struggling with, we would have appreciated at least, the thinking behind, what must go into this particular budget. Of course, the issue was to look at the outcomes of what the numbers and how the numbers are going to be divvied up. The reality is that the budget, in the way that, we foresaw it and were at least, expecting, is that it must be a budget which supports, growth of the economy. It must be a budget that, at least follows on the three pillars that the president has so articulately laid out in the SONA. So the first issue of growth is that we at least are comfortable that there is a trajectory towards growth, which the World Bank projects about 1.8% growth in the current financial year, and in the medium term to about 2%. And the desire of government is to grow at 3%. So we're expecting to understand how that leapfrog would be from at least 1.8% to 3%, and even further. So I think what was transpired today is nothing short of disappointment. It's nothing short of showing that at least the thinking even behind the budget. Perhaps there is not a lot of thinking that we can take away from it, which is something that could have even sufficed to calm the parliament and to calm the citizens.
Right, now we know the finance minister didn't deliver a formal budget in parliament, much to the annoyance of the political parties. He did, however, brief the media afterwards when he confirmed this wild speculation that was going on all afternoon, all morning, that in fact there was a disagreement between the parties over a 2% VAT hike, and he confirmed that was the case, and suggesting that effectively government needed money to fund many of its social projects, right? So what do you think about the fact that we now in such a position of shortfall that we now have to go to everybody who are completely cash struck already and want to effectively tax us with a further 2%? What do you think about that? And if in the absence of that, because we assume then the parties that didn't sign now will not sign in 2 weeks' time, where then does the government find the money?
So I think in terms of looking at all the available levers that government has to pull, I think VAT was a more pedestrian one, which I think does harm and violates one of the pillars, which is pillar number 2, to improve and ameliorate the high cost of living for the citizens. So if you go and increase VAT by 2% and move it to 17%, you've effectively taken away or at least increased the cost of living for the entire population without having to at least think about the other ways. This is how we think about it from a DSO consulting point of view. Government has a number of revenue streams that they should be looking at. You can go from hospitals, you can go from the tolling of roads in terms of national roads, you can go to the ports in terms of licensing, the movement of goods that are transported by the likes of Transnet. Eskom probably is at the top of what they should have been charging from a tariffs point of view. But the reality is that there are many leakages in terms of government's own assets that should be bringing revenue from public works. We understand the minister, and you would have seen the minister is busy trying to find the asset register, to fine tune it, to break the leases in the private sector and in favor of using government properties. But the reality is that there are many other revenue items that government has not even looked at, and the fact that we rely on tax and now we're going to go and increase VAT, I think it's quite a pedestrian type of looking at the budget. So it just confirms that this is a consumptive budget as opposed to a productive budget, which is what we wanted to see.
Okay, now the fact that the ANC, and I'll say the ANC's own partners, particularly we understand the DN, some may correct it as we find out more about it, refused to sign that 2% VAT increase, means they're unlikely to then sign in 2 weeks' time, right? What then do you expect to happen between now and then? Because something still has to happen.
Well, I think the issue here is that government cannot keep on pulling a rabbit out of the hat. GFECRA was a great rabbit that was pulled out of the hat. VAT, I think, is just annoying in terms of, the greater citizenry to be able to go and increase, VAT to such an extent. And when it was actually muted in the past, 2 financial years that, VAT, would increase. The other thing to do, as I've already laid out, is let's make the state-owned companies to be to function. Let's get them to be able to generate the revenue, to transport, the goods, to be able to unlock, the economy, get, so and there are many, over 700, state-owned
So
companies
effectively
that, must be put to work.
Effectively increase efficiency and productivity, and
Absolutely.
cut out the wastages caused by just negligence and by corruption. I may say, yeah.
And reduce the structure of government. I think, the whole thing that, sometimes, we take it as a nice joke, when they talk about, the bloated, nature of, government. If you look at, the national, the provincial and the local, and I remember this number, 45% of the entire fiscus goes to the national department, about 43% goes, to provinces, and only about, sub 10%, goes to the local. So you can understand that the structure of national and provincial takes up, almost 80 to 90% of the entire budget of the country to finance. So therein is the number. So let's start looking at, reducing that structure, reducing the wage bill, and structurally reorganizing government so that it doesn't have to function at such a high cost.
You've got us thinking about that. Thank you for your time, Mielani Holeni. Lots to consider around that, and I think some practical examples of that too. Before we get to the news, listen to this, right? 39-year-old Zakiti loves Outsurance Essential because, well, it's low-cost insurance designed for older cars. Now, for her 2011 VW Polo 1.6 Trendline, remember that car? She only pays 525 rands a month. With Outsurance Essential, you get up to 1 million rand liability cover. That means if you cause an accident, the other car could be covered for up to 1 million rands. Add even more value with motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns, and get savings with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rands. You got that? SMS CAR to 43187, CAR 43187. Do that now. License, insurer, and FSP, T's and C's, and information online. Right, let's get the news. It's just gone 5 o'clock. Here's Greg Hose.
Thank you, Ashraf. Cabinet to hold discussions over the budget and a rise in retail trade sales. Good day to you. The Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, says Cabinet is due to hold further discussions in order to find each other, so a newly agreed on budget could be tabled on March 12th. This follows dramatic scenes in Cape Town, where the Minister was unable to table the 2025 budget due to disagreements within the Government of National Unity over an expected 2% rise in VAT. The Minister elaborates.
Section 27 of the Public Finance Management Act requires that the annual budget be tabled prior to the start of the financial year or in exceptional circumstances on a date as soon as possible after the start of the financial year, as the Minister of Finance may determine. Therefore, further discussion in Cabinet will take place in preparation for a new or amended budget to be tabled on the 12th of March 2025. That's your next date for the new budget.
Meanwhile, the DA leader John Steenhuisen says the postponement of the budget is a sign that the GNU is working well. The decision to postpone was taken at an urgent cabinet briefing between President Cyril Ramaphosa and GNU partners shortly before the speech was due to be delivered. Steenhuisen says the postponement shows that the GNU is working.
And today is a very good example of how it's working. I think any observer should be taking great heart in the fact that this has happened today, because it is finally showing that in South Africa we have a group of parties now that are in government and are in charge, and it's through their collaboration that the good decisions, the wise decisions, and the financially sound decisions will be made to make sure that the economy is stewarded through what has been a very difficult time and into far safer waters.
South Africa's retail trade sales have continued on a positive path, increasing by 3.1% year-on-year in December 2024. According to Stats South Africa, retailers in textiles, clothing, footwear and leather goods made the largest positive contribution. Fahima Adia is from Momentum Securities.
And I think an important thing to note is we also had those two-part withdrawals, and that actually helped the consumer to reduce some of the higher interest-bearing debt. So that's freed up some of their funding, I think, to be able to spend in other areas, such as on the retailers. So I can imagine that is what's likely driving the sales there.
5 accused drug lords have briefly appeared in the Groblersdal Magistrates Court in Limpopo. The accused, which include 3 Mexican nationals, were arrested in connection with a drug bust worth more than 2 billion rand at a farm last year. They allegedly operated a drug manufacturing lab. Abufani Munyai reports.
The accused have had their case transferred to the Groblersdal Regional Court. The accused allegedly manufactured drugs at the Tabamunati farm in Groblersdal. Police say the three Mexican nationals have been in the country illegally for over 2 years. The accused are facing several charges, including dealing in drugs. Their first appearance in the regional court has been scheduled for the 14th of April. The accused are in police custody. Abafani Munyayi, SABC News, Polokwane.
Finally, an urban district in the Philippines is offering a reward to people who catch mosquitoes in order to curb the spread of dengue fever. The head of Addition Hills is offering 1 peso, slightly less than 2 US cents, for every 5 mosquitoes handed over. The Philippines has seen a rise in cases of the fever this year. The top story, the finance minister says Cabinet is due to hold further discussions in order to find each other so a newly agreed on budget can be tabled on March 12th. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khos.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Erasmus invites overseas-based players and rising stars to virtual camps, and Pakistan 69 for 3 after 20 overs. They need 252 runs in 29 overs in their opening match against New Zealand to win. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N12 eastbound has a stationary vehicle just before the R24 highway split. The N12 westbound has a crash before the R554 Lenasia exit. Marlborough Drive eastbound is slow moving towards Northway, and the N1 northbound in Midrand is slow moving towards New Road. In KZN, the N3 eastbound in Ashburton has a stationary truck before Linfield Park exit, and Umgeni Road westbound is slow moving through Springfield Park. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound slow moving towards Okavango Road exit. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the M5 southbound slow moving towards Racecourse Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I'll tell you what, everybody's going to ask this question. Where were you? Where were you on the day that South Africa's budget speech did not happen? And every one of us, in 5, 10, 20, 30 years, we are going to have a story to tell. I know, because I live close by, my plan was to watch the budget speech at home because we're going to start the show at 4 o'clock today. And then in the middle of all that and potentially having tea, I had to rush. The moment I heard there was a postponement, like, I need to get to on air because I can't see us now talking about other things. So where were you? It's an implication, and many people commenting about the different considerations regarding the budget, right? Now, I'll tell you what, feel free to give your comments. What we'll do from around 1:45, we're going to play a whole range of your thoughts, your calls on all the issues we'll talk about. We'll talk, however, we'll get reaction from the DA in a few minutes' time. But first things first, let's get the thoughts of the African National Congress regarding the budget speech, no budget speech. Mahlengi Bengu Motsiri with me, the ANC's national spokesperson. Appreciate you giving up your time. You're the National Pulse. Hi.
Afternoon, Ashraf.
Good afternoon. Right, so I've asked everybody else this. I might as well ask you. What's your reaction to the budget speech, no budget speech? One word, just your one word.
Well, regrettable, and we acknowledge the circumstances that led to the postponement. And we do think that true to the nature, the robust nature of our democracy, we do need to allow the executive an opportunity and space to come to manage a process of achieving consensus, as much consensus as possible. It's in the best interest of this democracy. It's in the best interest of the nation that key parties or all parties to the GNU are joined up together when the budget is pronounced and then when it is implemented.
Okay. Now, of course, you say regrettable. I mean, we're getting a whole range of comments from chaos to, idiots to ludicrous to, a whole lot of different things, okay, to also well done type of scenarios. Help us understand what is the process from the different parties that makes up government, in this case, or the executive, that has to agree for a budget speech to be tabled in Parliament?
And I think that it's important to set context as I answer your question, Ashraf. The context here also is that this is the first time that a budget is being passed when you have an executive that is constituted by other parties, by a number of parties to it. And so South Africans, I would say that we would be naive not to expect that there would be a lot of contestation around the budget, given the fact that the ANC has got to negotiate even its own positions. We are quite mindful of that. And our responsibility is to try and lead the country into unity, into unified perspectives. Having said that, the process, of course, as we know, gets initiated in the executive in the form of the bill, the appropriation bill, and all other related acts, such as the Exchequer Act and others that are supporting it. And that process largely starts being a bureaucratic process, but also is a strategic process because it's informed by the strategic plan of government and the annual performance plan of the financial year under consideration. Mm-hmm. That process then goes through a number of committees, including the budget committee or in the National Treasury. So pretty much a very rigorous treasury process that then goes to cabinet. And cabinet, as I indicated, how it is constituted, requires that there is a lot of a more extended consultation, and perhaps with hindsight, that kind of extended consultation is what needed to be anticipated. And then the process would also go to the appropriation committee in Parliament by way of the legislative oversight.
So it's quite a long drawn process right now. We know we're not even discussing the 2%. Yes. We'll come to that in a minute, right? But the complaint we've heard today across the board to say, how could it be that the fact that political parties that make up the GNU disagree, we understand you will disagree, but the fact that you could disagree as late as today, that warranted what we have heard of an emergency cabinet meeting, how could this happen this late? And therefore, obviously, by the time of the budget speech at 2 o'clock, there was no agreement. How could we get ourselves into that position? Surely all the parties concerned at some stage needed to understand that a deadline had to be met a few days ago or a few hours before, but certainly not on the day. Why did it go on this late?
Well, I think that question is also best directed to the government spokesperson in the form of the minister in the presidency responsible for government communication. I can only just say that from the perspective of the ANC, having said that this should not, ideally this should not have happened, and timelines should have been amended when it became clear that there would be a contentious matters that are not resolvable in the time period that was initially anticipated. But having said that, we also do need to acknowledge that this new model that we have of government and the shape of government that we have will present moments of this nature. I think it has been plain sailing by and large. Yes, there have been disagreements around the Bella Act, around the NHI, around the Land Expropriation Act, but that all of those differences have really been managed in a mature manner, befitting really of accolades, particularly to the president as head of state. It was bound to have a moment where the differences need extra effort, and I think this is such a moment.
Let's talk about what we understand by this now 2% VAT increase, which was proposed obviously by the ANC, right? And then my understanding, it was rejected by other parties, noteworthy the DA. Can you confirm that was the position? And then what happens next now?
I think that I've just seen a few posters and, spirited posters by the DA suggesting that the DA's intervention, or they have prevailed by stopping the ANC from doing X, Y, Z. I think that's a very polarizing discourse. And we shouldn't go in that direction, also because it is totally untrue. There were a number of parties, including within the ANC, but even other parties, that have strong views either for or against on this matter of the tax increases or keeping packing the tax where it is. And I really, really think South Africans must frown upon anything that seeks to, sort of dabble in the area of point scoring.
Okay. So you're saying it was the DA, there were other political parties, but significantly, if I hear what you're saying there were executive members within the ANC themselves that disagreed on a 2% increase, right?
Not entirely. I wouldn't say they disagreed. We normally have a culture of holding one line. But the point that I think I'm letting listeners into is the fact that the ANC has never been stubbornly pursuing this matter, has opened the door to a negotiation. And that is really the stance of the ANC. And I would imagine the ANC is still going to reflect on this matter, given the fact that now we have an opportunity to maybe explore other options to try and ensure that we don't undermine the aims of the National Development Plan and the aims of the medium-term strategic framework of government.
Okay, right. One line, I know you need to go. John Steenhuisen from the DA says this is a good example that the GNU is working. Your response to that?
Well, the GNU is definitely working. I wouldn't see this as a threat to the existence of the GNU. It remains to be told that, and I'm happy that he's saying that, because for the first time we won't be getting threats about leaving the GNU. But from where we stand as the ANC, the GNU is never going to be problem-free, and we've always been quite awake to that reality. We must debate, we must arrive at consensus and do what we ought to do and provide leadership to the country. So as the ANC, we don't have the luxury of bickering.
Let's hope we have a different conversation on the 12th of March. Matlengo Bengu Motsiri, the ANC's national spokesperson, much appreciate you connecting to us here on the National Pulse. We'll get the DA perspective in a moment.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
All right, in fact, before we get to the DA, let's get the opinion then of the ACDP. With me is Steve Swart, an MP for the ACDP. Appreciate your time here on the National Pulse.
Yes, thank you, Ashraf, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. Right, your one word to describe what happened today, or what didn't happen today?
Disappointing. I mean, we're not part of the GNU. We spent the whole morning in the lockup preparing for the speech. We were totally unaware. And then we were called, I'm a whip as well, so I was called to a meeting of the whips, and where we were then asked whether, in view of the fact that the GNU had not reached a consensus, whether we would agree to the postponement of the budget. Now, that's where you then put party political issues aside, and we spoke as mature leaders. We form a constructive centrist grouping, and we said, yes, we understand this is not Parliament's decision. The executive has decided not to table the budget, and the Speaker was basically saying, well, we can't continue because nothing's going to happen. So we then said, look, we agreed to this, but the ACDP insisted that there must be a specific timeline, because at that stage it was indefinite postponement, and I said, I insist that you must give a timeline, and now we know at least that it is the 12th of March. But it is a very interesting, I also look at it from a positive perspective. You know, we want the GNU to succeed, but we want to hold them accountable as well. And I think it's very important that no longer can the ANC just ram through its budget. When we saw the 2% VAT this morning in the lockup, we were deeply concerned. There's no ways we would have supported it. And this is very positive, because it means there's robust engagement within the GNU, and that ANC can no longer just hold the...
So because you're interesting, because I mean, there's two strands. The one is, look, this is a good example of the GNU not working. The other is, this is a good example of the GNU working, which shows a high degree of a political maturity. That means they can be together, but effectively they can argue different points for what they see as what is best for the country.
I agree. I agree with the latter. I think this is very positive, but your question is spot on. How could it end up so late? Why wasn't this dealt with much earlier? And I think it's a massive learning curve for the ANC that is so used to ramming through the issues. They thought they could quickly call a cabinet meeting and push it through, and it didn't happen. And so I see it as a very positive development that we can now, the ANC realizes that whilst they are the increased numbers in the GNU, they can't ram things through. But I was also disappointed that a lot of the party politics in the Parliament today, just, everything has suffered, everything has collapsed. That's nonsense. The GNU is there. We are effective opposition. We will engage with the budget in 2 weeks' time. We will have an in-depth discussion about the appropriation bill, and it will be tabled. We'll have full ventilation of the issues, but I do think this is a good time for robust engagement on issues that deeply concern the citizens of South Africa.
Okay.
Whereas in the past it was just tabled and it was rammed through by the ANC, and now particularly the 2% VAT issue, which impacts every South African, will be deeply engaged and deeply ventilated.
Okay, your point is gone with a rubber stamp scenario we had in the past. Just the last thing, you made the point that you would have opposed as ACDP that 2% increase if it was tabled in Parliament itself, right? So, but the government certainly needs money. It is very clear for the Minister of Finance. And we know there's shortfalls across the board and it compromises service delivery. So what then very quickly would be the ACDP example of where to find the 2%?
Yes. We've always said as the ACDP, go after the money that's been stolen, the tens of billions of rands that is sitting in overseas bank accounts. Give SARS the extra resources. They collect that 80 billion rand that is there. Give them the 3 billion rand and they can collect those tens of billions of rands that's sitting there. Give those law enforcement agencies extra resources. They can collect the tens of billions of rands and we can balance our books.
And that's where we can leave it. Steve Swart, thank you for your time. An MP for the ACDP. That's their perspective. We'll get the DA perspective next.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Jazz lovers, the wait is over. Africa's grandest gathering returns on the 25th to the 26th of April at the Cape Town International Convention Center. Experience 2 nights of soul-stirring jazz, electrifying collaborations, and over 30 world-class artists across 4 iconic stages. Don't miss this unforgettable musical experience. Get your tickets now at ticketmaster.co.za. Brought to you by Independent Media, proud media partner of the Cape Town International Jazz Festival.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, another perspective, this time from the DA. The national spokesperson is Karabo Khao. Karabo, good to connect with you once again. You're on the National Pulse.
Yes, hi, Ashraf, and hello to your South African viewers.
Hello, right. Give me your one word. I've asked everybody else this. One word to describe your position, your emotions on the postponement of the budget speech.
Victory for South Africans.
Okay.
One word is victory.
Right.
The DA is not victorious here. South Africans are victorious because it would have been South Africans, Ashraf, who would have had to bear the cost of a 2% VAT, which would mean that there's a greater cost to pay for food, for transport and basic essentials, which South Africans are already battling to pay for. And that's why we're very happy as the Democratic Alliance that we were able to show our participation in the GNU to be in favor of South Africans, vulnerable South Africans, middle-class South Africans and poor South Africans who will feel the pinch of a 2% VAT increase.
So there's 2 parts. One is the VAT story, which I'll come to in a moment. The second part is the fact that it actually got postponed today. So the bulk of the argument is like, how could, government, and that would include the DA, leave it this late? And then effectively it's a complete no-show. What a waste of time. What a waste of money. So tell us what happened. Why did it continue this late to a point of no agreement?
The ANC was arrogant in simple terms. That's what happened. We've had multiple engagements with the ANC. As you would know, we have a deputy minister of the Democratic Alliance in Finance, engaging on alternative ways to have a budget that makes sense, one that is focused on growing the economy, creating jobs, and making sure that we cushion South Africans for any further attacks, which are in no other frank terms a bailout of state corruption and inefficiencies that now needs to be coughed up by South Africans who are robbed by the same state because of their inefficiencies. So, and we gave them an alternative way to look at how they can organize the budget. They refused to do so. And come the 59th second, as was the case today, they then suddenly realized that, the DA is not kidding. The DA is serious. We will not be in support of this. And now we have to go back to the drawing table, a table that we were on before, giving the same solutions that we'll be giving them right now.
Did they give the impression that no matter the differences in the deliberations yesterday, the day before, and even today, that at some stage the DA will say, well, we understand, fine, we'll sign and go ahead? Did you get that impression from the ANC part that that's what they expected?
There was a bluff, but also inherently, even if they took us seriously, the ANC has been operating like they have the numbers that they had in the previous administration. In previous administrations, they no longer have the numbers to just agree at cabinet and then go to parliament and have the sweeping majority numbers to vote in favor of the budget. And they miscalculated the reality of the situation. They're a 39% party. So even when cabinet does not agree, they still can't go to parliament and have all political and have an ANC majority parliament to support their budget. That's what happened here.
All right, you claim a victory, and in fact, from what we can hear, there's been multiple sources suggesting that the non-participation, the non-signing of the DA was the key factor in determining the budget speech did not continue today. I chatted to the ANC spokesperson, right, who said it's not the DA only. If the DA is sounding like they're the only ones, then that's incorrect. So, how many other parties also opposed this position of the ANC?
It's not up to us to speak about how many other parties have not been in favor of this. It is for us as South Africans, in conclusions, to say as the Democratic Alliance of South Africans, is that we are happy that we no longer have a 2% increase on VAT. We want to rescue South Africans, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you, Ashraf.
Okay, and just the last thing in one quick line. So if you reject the 2%, the government still needs money. We know that. Where do we find the 2%? Oh, I think we just lost it. Okay, let's leave it at that. We'll probably get that reaction sometime down the line, another day. Karabo Kau, the DA national spokesperson. We'll get the EFF response after this.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Okay, let's get another perspective from the EFF now. Their MPs, Mazwi Blose. Mazwi, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
No, thank you very much, Ashraf, for having us, and greetings to the listeners of SAFM.
Thank you. Let me continue the theme. Your one word to describe what happened today. Just one word.
Well, disastrous. It's a disaster for the South African people. But as the EFF, we've always warned about this. That was bound to happen.
Okay, why is it a disaster? Tell me why. The DA says victory. You say disaster.
No, it doesn't seem that the DA actually understand the impact of what is happening today. Because if you are a government with no budget, it means there is no government in the country. This is exactly what we've been telling the ANC, that for them to get into government with right-wing organizations, these last contradictions are going to play themselves out, because you've got two opposing organizations that are one is on the left and one is on the right, and this is just a fight over the means of control of South Africa. It's not. It's simple as that. The DA is using the budget to frustrate the ANC in terms of the NHI policies, in terms of the expropriation bill, and all of these policies that the ANC have been pushing. And the DA is using this to show the ANC that they are in charge and they are not going to allow the ANC to transform
whatever the DA motive. Let's just ignore the motive for the moment, right? Principally, was the DA right in not signing off the budget speech today, or were they wrong?
So the DA, in terms of procedure, you do not sign off the budget at a cabinet level. So in the cabinet, we don't see cabinets as different political parties. So cabinets must formulate a budget, whether they agree or not. The Minister of Finance must come to Parliament and table the budget. So if the DA had a problem with the budget, they were not supposed to frustrate the process of today, where the budget must be tabled. They were supposed to allow the budget to be tabled and then reject it. But because they cannot do it, because they are not serious about rejecting the budget, because they understand the implications of rejecting that budget. And it's not even true that they are against the 2% increase. In fact, they are for it. Because if they were against it, they were supposed to expose the ANC. Because now the ANC is speaking in folk tongues. We don't even know who's... So they were supposed to allow the budget to be tabled. We as the EFF were going to reject the 2% increase in VAT. The DA was supposed to support us in that rejection. Then we could come out and say, oh, all right, this is the wrong budget. Then the budget can go back to be reviewed, knowing very well that Parliament has rejected
all right.
it.
I know your leader certainly made the point in Parliament today to say, let us hear the budget being presented, right? Of course, the spokesperson for the Speaker for the National Assembly turned that down, right? Did she explain why that was not possible?
No, there's no explanation, right? Even now, you were speaking to the spokesperson of the ANC. You're asking a direct question, is the ANC support of this or not? Even the Secretary General of the ANC is saying it's not the ANC that is supporting this. Now they are speaking about being open to negotiations and all of that. So now everyone is playing party politics with the budgets of the country, whereby our civil servants are waiting for their money. Departments have exhausted funds. They are waiting for their money to go and do their APPs. And all institutions are waiting for budgets. How are you going to run a country without a budget? And again, they're saying now they're postponing to a later date. What is going to change between now and then? Because there is nothing that's going to change. The DA is just handpicking the
Okay, but clearly something has to change. If nothing changes, nothing will get signed, isn't it? Something has to change for the parties to agree so that the budget can be accepted.
No, but Ashraf, as I'm saying to you, budget is not signed at a cabinet level. It must come to Parliament for approval or non-approval. That's all we are saying. We're saying whatever the disagreements that are happening in cabinet should not then disallow Parliament to do its work in terms of approving or not approving the budget. So whether those disagreements in the chain, we don't care as parliamentarians. We are there representing our people and we are going to express ourselves. We need to be given a chance as well to debate this budget and express ourselves why we are rejecting. And we want to hear the views of the DA as well in the debates of the budgets. They must not just have an elite arrangement in cabinets and frustrate the process.
Looking forward to your debate on the 12th of March and thereafter. Mazwi Blozi, the EFF MP, speaking to us here on the National Pulse. Thanks for your time. Right, let's get the news headlines. Here's Greg Kroos.
Quick look at the headlines. Market analysts expect the rand to remain under pressure following the postponement of the tabling of the budget speech. The finance minister says cabinet's due to hold further discussions in order to find each other so a newly agreed on budget can be tabled on March 12th. And the Ukrainian president is hit back at US President Donald Trump's suggestion that Ukraine started the war with Russia and that his popularity ratings are low. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound is slow moving through Crown interchange towards Boysens. The R101 in Hammanskraal has flooding reported at Ramotse, so approach with caution. And Winnie Mandela Drive northbound in Hurlingham is slow moving towards Republic Road. In KZN, Linwood Road, just before the N1, fallen trees blocking both lanes, so please proceed with caution. The N3 eastbound in Ashburton has a stationary truck just before Linfield Park exit, and Umgeni Road westbound is slow moving through Springfield Park. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound slow moving towards the M5 Kuburg interchange. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend, and on Baden-Powell Drive, a pedestrian crash reported near Jafta Masimola Road with stop-go controls in place, so please expect delays. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Chumi, you're going to talk rugby?
Yes, Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus has invited 18 World Cup winning Springboks and 8 promising youngsters to attend a virtual Springbok alignment camp. Just last week, Erasmus hosted an in-person alignment camp for 56 players, and of the 26 players that have been invited today involve Sia Masuku, Faf de Klerk, as well as injury-plagued Loot de Jager, amongst others. And basically, Erasmus and his support staff are basically just lining out their vision and the expectations from the players throughout the season or throughout the year. Then moving on to football, the South African Revenue Services have been given the green light by the High Court to sell Royal AM, with the interested buyers to make a bid from 15 million rand for the club. The sale is part of SARS efforts to recover 40 million rand in tax debt linked to club president Shaun Mkhize and her Family Trust. Now, while the club's sale price has been set at 15 million rand, buyers must also take on existing financial obligation. This includes another 15 million rand owed to striker Samir Nurkovic following a ruling at the Court of Arbitration for Sport last year. Still staying with the football, Orlando Pirates striker Tshegofatso Mabaza will definitely be looking to lead Orlando Pirates to another victory against Golden Arrows in the Betway Premiership tonight at the Mpumalanga Stadium. They're looking to close the gap at the top against the runaway lot leaders and defending champions Mamelodi Sundowns.
Yes, definitely. We currently are chasing in the league. We know what we have to do. We have to win all our games and hopefully a few results go our way as well. But no pressure on us. We'll take it one game at a time, starting on Wednesday with Golden Arrows.
Well, it's not the only Betway Premiership clash to look forward to today. Marumo Gallants are playing Mamelodi Sundowns, looking to repeat what TS Galaxy did to them last week, claiming that 1-0 win over them. Then Skukunu United host Amazulu, with those games all starting at 7:30. Then Champions League action today, but before that, Real Madrid midfielder Jude Bellingham has been suspended for 2 games for disrespect towards a referee on Saturday. The 21-year-old, however, will be available for Manchester City's game tonight against Real Madrid. However, he will miss the 2 La Liga matches. And Man City today are looking forward to overturning last week's 3-2 defeat to Real. And Bernardo Silva says there's no room for errors.
When a team is so successful as ours was in the last 7 to 8 seasons, you lose a few games, you're not used to it, you have a bad season, you have a bad few months, and we don't accept it. We don't accept the situation, we don't take well losing, not winning, and winning. But we're not in the same dark place, especially personally, that I was feeling like we were in, I would say, November.
Then looking at the Champions Trophy, remember it kicked off today. Pakistan sitting on 124 for 3 after 29 overs. They need 197 runs in 20 overs to win. Earlier on, New Zealand posted 320 for 5 in their 50 overs. And obviously Pakistan looking to kick off the tournament on a high. In terms of tomorrow, India opened the Champions Trophy campaign against Bangladesh in Dubai, and South Africa play on Friday against Afghanistan. And finally in F1, Lewis Hamilton has taken to the track for the first time behind the wheel of Ferrari SF25 car, fresh of yesterday's F1 2025 season launch. Hamilton started off the day today looking at Charles Leclerc taking a ride, and then later on this afternoon he was driving in that Ferrari car, and it'll be interesting to see how he's going to do throughout the season this year or this season. But that's it. It is a wrap from my side, Ashraf.
All right, so there we are. So you have a good evening and reflect on the no budget and what have you. Just by the way, on the we're talking about the football club. What's the latest regarding the club that's not been playing? In terms of decision on the PSL.
Royal AM, we're still waiting to hear a word from the PSL. Remember, they had that meeting today. Nothing has been said as yet still. So they're still deliberating if they should expel them or not. However, there's a number of matches that have been postponed. So as things stand, we're still waiting to hear what the Premier Soccer League is saying about Royal AM.
I wonder. You better say your goodbyes.
Well, that's it. Ke nna Tumeng Kgapele, Modimo ke yo.
This summer, SABC brings us together anytime, anywhere. Catch all the drama, entertainment, and sport on SABC TV. Turn up the volume with your favorite hits and shows on SABC Radio. Stream wherever you are with SABC Plus and join the fun at unmissable SABC events near you. From breaking news to moments that move us, SABC is your companion for every summer memory. Celebrate a summer of togetherness with SABC, your home for connection, entertainment, and inspiration.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
I tell you what, if all I can say, Jimmy Moyaha, is you had to rewrite the script. You got a show coming up in 6. Tell me all about that.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. It's been nothing short of an eventful afternoon with all of the happenings at Parliament. We thought we were going to have a budget speech. I thought this conversation was going to be a very easy one to give you a rundown of what's coming up on the show today, but we've had to adjust the show. We're going to continue to look at the developments that came out and where that puts South Africa from a budget perspective. That speech will be tabled at some point. We now know the date is the 12th of March, but the markets have nonetheless reacted to the absence of a speech. And if we look at equity markets in South Africa, we closed out the day in red territory, but that is something that has been a theme in global markets as well. If we look at Asian markets that were trading first, the only Asian market that was trading in the green was the Shanghai index, about 0.75% in the green. European markets all in the red. CAC 40 and the DAX in Germany both more than 1% in the red in each case there. The FTSE down 0.75%, NASDAQ down almost 0.5% at the moment, and the S&P down about 0.25%. So we can expect that equity markets would be trading in red territory from our own local markets. Resources were down 2%, industrials down 0.73%, and financials down 0.5%. As a result of that, the all share was down 0.8%. The top 40 was down 0.8%. And when we look at the rand is holding steady back at 18 rand 52 against the US dollar. At some point we were at 18 rand 60 against the US dollar. So marginal movements from a rand perspective in line with that reaction to the budget being postponed. The rand against the euro 19 rand 34, and one British pound will cost you 23 rand and 34 cents. One Australian dollar will cost you 11 rand and 79. If you're looking at commodity prices, they've come down quite a bit. The platinum and palladium pricing has come down below $1,000 an ounce in each case there. Brent crude has gone up. It's at $76.67 a barrel, and the price of gold is up about 1.3% at $2,938 a fine ounce. So when we look at the market movements, clearly a sign that we are going to be in for some volatile times. We're going to be unpacking those market developments a little later on, but also reflecting on the not budget, or the budget that wasn't a budget, that took place a little earlier today. So we're going to be looking at that, trying to unpack it from various different perspectives. I'm going to have the perspective of Professor Adrian Seville from Gordon Institute of Business Sciences. We're going to speak to a seasoned analyst that we know, Khaya Sithole, to get his perspectives around this. But we're also going to speak to the chair of the Appropriations Committee, because the lack of a budget now affects the Appropriations Committee's work that they need to do. Interestingly enough, the chair of that Appropriations Committee also happens to be the leader of Build One South Africa, Mmusi Maimane. So we're going to get quite a bit of reactions to what took place this afternoon and what needs to take place ahead of the 12th of March, when we are expecting to finally get that budget speech. We're also understanding of the fact that the 12th of March could come around and we might not have a budget speech there. But for now, we hold on to that date because that's the date we've been given by National Treasury and by the National Assembly as well. So we're going to look at that. We're going to try and wrap our heads around this historic moment that's never happened in the history of South Africa, or democratic South Africa rather. But apparently this is not a very uncommon thing. This is something that happens around the world all the time. For South Africa it might be new, but for the rest of the world it's not so new. So we're going to get those permutations and thoughts and see if we can make heads or tails of what took place this afternoon. But for now, Ashraf, back to you.
Okay, perfect. Jimmy, you have your budget, no budget show coming up from 6 to 7 p.m. here on SAFM, followed by sport from 7 onwards, right? We'll chat to Mzwanele Manye after this.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
In fact, we should be connecting with the Manye just shortly, but here's a clip from the Good Party leader, Patricia de Lille, and what she says, I think, gives us a very good insight into who agreed and who disagreed about what happened regarding the postponement of today's budget speech.
First of all, the Good Party support the postponement. But the truth is, all parties in the GNU agreed to the postponement, not certain parties. Let us not play politics, because the people out there are waiting on us to lead this government of national unity. All the parties agreed not only the DA or the PA, it is the IFP, good PAC. We all agreed. Please don't play politics with our people. Thank you.
That's the voice of Patricia de Lille from the Good Party. Let's get the opinion now of the MK Party. Their chief whip is Mzwanele Manye. Good chatting to you, Mzwanele. Thanks for connecting. You're the National Pulse.
Hi there, Ashraf. Good to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Where shall I start?
Well, I don't know. Well, you should start with this. I've asked everybody this.
No,
What's your one word? What's your one word to describe what happened today?
Not even the center is not holding. There is no center. That's the one word to describe. We've never had a situation like this where the executive is out of its wits in terms of how to deal with the situation. Today, we've never seen a thing like this before. There is no leadership in this country. I think the only thing that should happen now, the entire cabinet should resign.
So when
the
you
country
say
cannot be subjected to this.
Okay, when you say there's no center, there's really two parts to it. One is the issue of the 2 percentage point increase, which I'll come to just now, right? The main part here is that the parties did not agree, and therefore you've had a no budget. Now, you've heard the voice of Patricia de Lille just now saying all the parties that made up the GNU, I know you're outside the GNU, all agreed to a postponement. That would suggest that at least the GNU agreed and they were holding.
No, but this is making deals with our lives. They should have tabled this thing. We should have even... this is like disrespecting Parliament. The fact that there's a disagreement, that's reason enough to bring to a debate in Parliament. We should have debated this, and we should have said that instead of this 2% here, do this different. We have made proposals in all of that. So this postponement has actually seriously undermined the workings of Parliament, has actually going to also even going to push back the expenditure. So the people that are going to feel the brunt is service delivery. Because 1st of April, the new budgets must kick in. Now, if this process is delayed like it is now, there's a risk that it will be unlawful to spend money you don't have. And you can't spend money before this budget is voted for. So that is the problem that this is facing.
Okay, so what choices did they have? So what we hear, and a lot of it is hearsay, is that the different parties that made up or make up the GNU, they had their own discussions, arguments and disagreements, and many of them, including the DA and many others as well, did not agree with the ANC line of an increase of 2 percentage points, right? So you're saying, okay, bring the issue to Parliament, table it, and let Parliament then reject it, which would have been your party amongst them. What would have happened next thereafter?
No, look, what would have happened is that, firstly, let's just understand one thing, that we don't have this whole notion about GNU and all of this is a false notion. Because if indeed there was a GNU, there would have been a common purpose. Clearly, there's no common purpose here. This whole facade, this whole saga, has actually exposed the point that we've been making, that this is just a Faustian pack, and the Faustian pack is now undoing. As it were. So what should have happened is that they should have come to Parliament and respect the processes and the rigor of Parliament. And Parliament, there would have been debates. In the debates, who would have said, instead of increasing the budget, the VAT by 2%, maybe cut expenditure, starting with a bloated cabinet, just reduce it to 10 people and all of that. That would have been the start. Before we even move. Then we could have looked at other areas where this government has got a lot of money that they're just squandering. Number one. Number two, we would have said certain of these monies that are required, these billions, are hidden in corruption. So have the zero tolerance to corruption. I'm telling you, overnight, you've raked up a few billions. Just by dealing with
all right,
corruption.
And I take it that is still your position. That means you would not supportive of the 2 percentage point increase, right?
Definitely. Yeah. In fact, not only that, we would not have supported the 2% VAT increase. We would have called for instead a 2% decrease in the VAT so that the poor have got some breathing space. So to make it a pro-poor budget, we would have increased or would have levied a wealth tax so that all the rich people living in Camps Bay, they must subsidize the poor, not the other way around. Okay. We would have called even for corporate tax to go up because the reason the corporate tax is as low as it was on the pretense that they're going to create jobs. Now they failed to create jobs, so therefore there must be a price for that,
Okay.
so that we can then use that money from those corporates to then do more job creation
All
projects.
right, got that 2 percentage point decrease, and then the wealth tax for the people, so that the people of Camps Bay must pay. Imzonela Mania, thank you for your time. I can imagine the Camps Bay crowd being upset about that. Much appreciate your time here on the National Pulse. Right, let's get your thoughts. We need to up the audience engagement on what is a historic day, isn't it?
Ever since Uspilion won 5,000 rand, 5 tower on Wheel of Fortune, he only wears white push-in sandals. Star white, Baba. And he owns 10 identical pairs. And before he did not even know the Queen's language. Now, Kalabo, wow. Chance, let's watch Wheel of Fortune weekdays, Monday to Friday at 7:30 on S3 and see how one spin changed Spillion's life and how it can change ours as well in just one day.
Right, 39-year-old Zakiti loves Outsurance Essential. Why? Because its low-cost insurance is designed for older cars. Well, for the 2011 VW Polo 1.6 Trendline, she only pays 525 rands a month. With Outsurance Essential, you get up to 1 million rand liability cover. That means if you cause an accident, the other car could be covered for up to 1 million rands. Now, add even more value with the motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns. Get saving with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rands. SMS CAR to 43187. You got that? CAR 43187. Licensed insurer and FSP, T's and C's and information online.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Right, amongst the many comments, parties like the EFF and the MK are just bitter that they were not given the opportunity to ridicule, shoot down and reject the budget. They wouldn't have contributed to any progress on passing the budget coming from Farai. And there's more. JCK and Musina, you have an opinion. Go for it.
Oh, Ashraf, are you well?
Yeah, pretty well indeed. Historic day. Goodness, man. Go for it. What's your point?
Today's a big day that will go down in the history. Our grandchildren will read about it. The GNU is on the move, and politicians should be reminded that they are the public representative. They should carry this mandate all the time that they must be pro-poor. So what happened today, it's good for the poor. The other thing that I would like to know is, if they were going to issue the budget, let's say Godongwana as the minister, was he going to include illegal immigrants as well as they are flooding the hospitals, the schools? That is what we must know. Maybe some of the disagreement that they got, because he must include those people in the budget. And the other thing is, you know, food is so expensive, clothes is so expensive. So to increase it to 17% doesn't make sense. Let me rest my case for now.
Okay, you certainly have, JCK. Thank you for that. There's one thing is for sure, that whatever the percentages are, that South Africans, even the rich South Africans, if I can call it that, are struggling. People are struggling to make ends meet. The wealthy, the not so wealthy, those who are absolutely below the poverty line, everybody's struggling in many ways.
Ashraf, Leon, first time messaging you. I was absolutely amazed how William from East London, who's just messaged, sounds exactly like you. Play his message again and you'll hear yourself talking. Thanks so much for a great show.
Oh my goodness, I better listen to that message now and find it, right, William? Well, not you're in about William's voice or Ashraf Ganda's voice, as per William. Point made. Thanks for enjoying the show. I really appreciate that feedback as well. Right.
Sorry, Ashraf. It's Mr. Suleiman. The one word we need is tax-free.
But tax-free means what? No taxes at all? Who does that? Any country that doesn't think it works? I'd like to know.
Afternoon, Ashraf. There is only one way to describe this whole thing. Chaotic. I mean, did they have time prior to this day to talk about it behind doors, close the doors, and then they would sort of when the Minister of Finance comes up, he will be having the backing of everyone.
Well, I tell you what, it's clear they talked and they talked and they talked and they disagreed and they disagreed and they disagreed right up until today.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. My one word is GNU is a disaster. Obviously, the minister had a budget, but it has been said that the cabinet partners in the GNU didn't agree to it. Hence the postponement. Yeah, Bafana Kumar in Memel.
Well, thanks for that, Bafana. Well, you know, I think a lot of what will really come out in the next couple of days, we'll find out exactly. But what's clear is many didn't agree with it. And the bottom line to all of this is that the government needs money. Why they need money is something we argue about every single day. When government doesn't have money, then service delivery is affected. So it's a huge concern.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. One word. Every time our government keeps saying they need money, they need money, they need money. If they have that money, we don't see what they are doing. We don't see what they are doing, but they keep saying they need money, they need money, they need money. I'm very disappointed about this budget speech. It's Percy in Matosana.
Thank you for that, Percy. Well, I think we see where they spend the money. I think it's audited. It's the unaudited amounts, the pilferage that's a problem, and the over-wastage. Like, for example, the bloated budget of the cabinet. It's there for all to see, isn't it? In the name of the GNU, remember? Temba in Klebecha, hello.
Hi, Ashraf. Quick one, man.
Yeah.
Let's dispel this notion from MK in this case that taxing the rich will create a positive impact in the economy and the creation of jobs. You know, Ashraf, this day and age, capital does not have borders. You tax the rich, they leave your country. They invest their capital somewhere else, and you lose out on the little that you had. So it's a notion that will take us to doomsday. The second thing that I wanted to raise, Ashraf, I am very worried with the events of today, that the ANC has given back the ground that it made by signing the past 3 legislations in the public. Now they've given back the narrative to the DA, losing the ground that they've made up in the public space just over this. Why would they and say we are going to Parliament for this day, having not done work that they should have done, both administratively and politically?
Okay, point well made. I mean, you're right. You need to tax the wealth or the wealthier, but once you overtax them, they do push off. I mean, you're spot on. And if they push off, you lose them, and that is usually problematic. So it can't be just like, just sort them out, and they'll pay, and they'll just smile. They're never going to do that. Here's more comments.
Hello, Ashraf. It's Tammy in East London. Hey, Mzansi. You know, Ashraf, there's nothing wrong with the postponement of a budget speech. What is wrong is for the parliamentarians to gather together in Cape Town at our expense. Because this thing should have been discussed virtually by chief whips of all these parties. They should not have organized the sitting and postponed in the last minute, because all that is a wasteful expenditure from the money that is not there, is not available. It's very disappointing what is happening in South Africa. It explains clearly that these people do not know what they are doing.
Well, did somebody get taken for granted? Maybe. Let me do that.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ashraf. This is Mdara Gede here in Eastern Cape. What's the rationale about the government, the Minister of Finance, to increase it from 15% to 17% VAT? Are they following the money that is supposed to be increased in March? What is the secret behind? This government is full of crooks. Especially him, Kodwangwana. He's a crook. Because he wants to benefit by himself. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Oh, goodness. This is a democracy, South Africa. Even on the national pulse, you have your opinions. You can't back it up here, but you certainly have expressed it. There we are. Another thoughts before we move on. Let me just sort that out. Oh, we've got gremlins.
Evening, Ashraf. This is Derek from Umhlanga. Thank goodness for the delay or the postponement of this budget speech, and thank goodness for the DA who stood their ground in insisting that there's not a 2% VAT increase, because that would have affected the poor terribly. The ANC doesn't care about the poor. What needs to happen instead of a VAT increase is that every deputy minister needs to be relieved of their duties. Deputy ministers are unnecessary. We need only have a minister in charge of each ministry. And what's more, they can drive around in Toyota Corollas. There's no need for them to drive around with bodyguards and X5s. Ridiculous. That's where our money should come from.
So why Toyota Corollas? Don't say that's cheap. They may Toyota may complain about you dropping our brand value just by saying that.
Hi, Ashraf. It's Robert Kalen Jimistin. I think the ANC want to put the increase of 2% in order to live luxury life for their own benefit. That is, the ministers and the all sort of cabinet should live the better luxury life by driving Mercedes, huge Mercedes. They don't think for the country. They think for themselves. I thank you.
Okay, here's the very last one I can play, and it is about the African National Congress.
Good afternoon, Ashraf Trevor here. Ashraf, it is now time for the people of South Africa to wake up, because the ANC is on a trajectory to destroy us. We are already seeing now they're not able to put on a budget, because if it wasn't for the DA, we would have been paying now 17% for VAT. So they are busy destroying this country. We will have to wake up now. Thank you, Ashraf.
Someone say you've woken up already. Okay, that's the show. I've never quite had a show like this before, where there was a plan to start the show at 4 o'clock. We started at 3 because the budget speech did not happen. Everything was planned in the moment. So big thanks to Temba, to Keys and Vusani, who put it all together, and of course Phineas, who made sure that all this happened. And of course you responded to that one word, and you can still continue with the one word. Just post it on social media, on the Twitter or the X platform. Tag SFM Radio, tag me, use the hashtag The National Pulse. What's your one word that describes your emotions regarding what happened today? The budget speech, no budget speech. And I say that because you know this, I know this. The National Pulse is not just 3 to 6. And in fact, it's 24/7. Here's the news with Greg Coase.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Rand under pressure over delayed budget, and Zelensky hits back at Trump.